Welcome to the podcast crafted for those who love diving into real life court stories before drifting off to a deep sleep. Tonight we'll delve deeply, meticulously, and expansively into two cases inspired by the legendary Judge Judy show Hartman v. Teal and Adams v. Trimble. These cases aren't just dry legal disputes. They're intricate slices of human psychology, revealing fractured family and romantic relationships torn apart by betrayed trust, shirked responsibilities, and mistakes we all might make in daily life. We'll dissect every detail with precision, diving into the motivations of each character, uncovering the hidden layers behind their testimonies, and tying it all tightly to real-world U.S. laws, from personal credit regulations and oral contracts in cohabitation to civil liabilities within families and issues surrounding addiction. Our style will mirror Judge Judy's sharp, unrelenting, yet fair and deeply humane, with incisive questions that make you think. You'll hear high-stakes dramatic moments, unexpected confessions, and lessons that prompt reflection on your own life. Picture yourself sitting in the courtroom watching it all unfold, but from the comfort of your warm bed, with dim lights and soothing jazz as the backdrop. Don't worry, this podcast is designed to captivate without keeping you awake. It will guide you into dreams with the satisfaction of justice served and perhaps a touch of contemplation about life itself. Before we dive into the first case, let me share a bit about Judge Judy. Judith Shainlin, the iconic judge whose style has inspired countless stories. For over 25 years, she's led her reality TV courtroom, handling thousands of small claims cases with wisdom, humor, and sternness. She teaches us that the law isn't distant. It's a tool for resolving everyday issues, from family squabbles to personal missteps. In this podcast, I'll channel her spirit to analyze, question, and conclude, making you feel like you're watching an extended episode of her show. Now, let's begin with the first case, where a mother faces off against her own daughter, a story of maternal love, responsibility, and the limits of forgiveness. Case number 40, Hartman v. Teal. The parties are called, stepping into the courtroom with tense expressions, the air heavy with familial drama. The plaintiffs are Betsy Hartman, a 44-year-old community college instructor with a wary demeanor, her hair neatly tied back, her eyes betraying a mix of disappointment and lingering love. Beside her is her husband, Donald Hartman, 67, a construction worker with a sturdy build but gentle demeanor, standing as a silent pillar of support for his wife. The defendant, Lisa Teal, 20 years old, Betsy's stepdaughter, a young woman with tousled hair, casual attire, and a defensive posture, as if trying to mask remorse beneath a veneer of youthful rebellion. The case revolves around two main allegations. Lisa made unauthorized transactions on the Hartmans' gas credit card, racking up approximately $242 in charges, and she damaged the engine of her mother's car by failing to maintain its oil levels, causing significant harm. But behind these dry figures lies a heartbreaking family saga. A mother who poured years into supporting her daughter, from allowing credit card use to lending her car, only to end up in court to teach a lesson about accountability. Judge Judy, with her signature style, sitting upright, eyes sharp as a hawk scanning the parties, begins by administering the oath, then immediately digs into the relationship. "She's your stepdaughter, correct?" Judge Judy asks, her voice ringing with a subtle accusation, prompting Betsy to confirm with a slightly trembling tone, revealing her inner turmoil. This is the first moment we see Betsy's complexity. She's not a cold-hearted plaintiff seeking money. She's a mother who sacrificed years raising Lisa, likely through the struggles of single parenthood before meeting Donald. Donald, her husband, is a secondary but vital figure. He says little during the trial, but his presence signals a united family, and this lawsuit was likely no easy decision, perhaps debated over late-night kitchen talks. Lisa, at 20, stands at the cusp of adulthood, but her actions scream immaturity, using her mother's credit card without considering consequences, driving carelessly, classic youthful mistakes that could lead to serious legal repercussions if unchecked. Let's pause to analyze the psychology. Betsy embodies the exhausted parent worn down by a child's recklessness. At 44, she's mid-career, balancing teaching, where she likely instills values of responsibility in her students, with family life, Suing her daughter must have been a gut-wrenching choice, torn between maternal love and the need for Lisa to grow up. Donald's quiet support suggests a stable partnership, contrasting Lisa's chaos. Lisa, meanwhile, represents the struggle of young adulthood, craving independence but lacking the discipline to achieve it. This case isn't just about money. It's a generational clash. Parents seeking control to protect, children craving freedom without accountability. Tying this to real-world U.S. law, the case touches on familial credit card misuse more common than you'd think. Under the Fair Credit Billing Act, FCBA of 1974, card holders are liable for up to $50 for unauthorized transactions if reported promptly. But when the culprit is a family member, things get murky due to implied or prior permissions, complicating proof of unauthorized use. In states like California, using a credit card without permission can be a crime under Penal Code Section 484, with penalties ranging from fines to jail time, depending on the damage. In small claims court, however, the focus is civil restitution, not criminal punishment, and Judge Judy won't easily forgive irresponsibility, but is sensitive to family ties, often prioritizing education over harsh penalties. Now let's dive into the core issue, the credit card dispute. Betsy testifies that Lisa used the gas card at a station without permission. She doesn't know exactly how Lisa got the card, but Lisa knew where Betsy kept her purse and had frequent access to the house, a small but critical detail revealing how familial trust was exploited. The first instance was in December 1999, when Lisa was about 19, corrected from an initial mix-up claiming she was 10. Betsy allowed Lisa to use the card for gas and demanded its immediate return, which Lisa did, showing initial compliance. 2 more times that month, Lisa was permitted to use it and returned it, establishing a history of allowed use that blurs the line between authorized and unauthorized. The real drama erupts when Lisa moves out in late December or early January 2000. Charges start piling up from late January, becoming excessive. At gas stations the Hartmans never frequented, likely near Lisa's new home. Betsy didn't notice the card was missing because she used it solely for gas, and during winter Donald typically filled up, a routine family habit that became a vulnerability. Judge Judy, in her classic style, expresses shock. "Why didn't you cancel the card after the first strange bill?" she demands, her voice rising like a teacher scolding a wayward student, forcing Betsy to explain. Betsy says the billing cycle closed on the 25th and charges began afterward, so she only noticed later, perhaps when the February statement arrived. The total charges over roughly a month, January 25 to February 25th, amounted to about $242. Not a fortune, but enough to wound trust and spark this lawsuit. Lisa counters that her mother gave her the card after she moved out for gas to get to work and school, even claiming Donald witnessed it. Betsy vehemently denies this, suggesting Lisa either kept the card after prior use or took it from her purse during a visit. Lisa had moved to her best friend's place, about 20 minutes away, a detail showing she was no longer living with Betsy, but could easily access the house, perhaps with a spare key or trust. The transactions were mostly at Sitco's 7-Eleven, a common convenience store chain, and Lisa admits to buying a pack of cigarettes once, a small act exposing her misuse, as the card was for gas only. Judge Judy, with her eagle-eyed scrutiny and decades of experience, reviews the statements and launches into a relentless interrogation, a scene that feels like a dramatic climax. Holding the paper, she reads the transactions aloud with deliberate emphasis. 2 charges on February 23, $6.62, $10. 2 on February 25's $8.35, $19.98. Then more $16 on February 13, $7.50 and $10 on February 14, $20 on February 15, $12 and $15 on February 16, and 3 gas charges, $15, $20 on February 19. How much driving were you doing to need gas this often? Judge Judy demands, her tone dripping with suspicion, implying Lisa was scamming. Perhaps taking cash from friends for gas, filling up a boyfriend's or friend's cars, or even buying groceries under the guise of gas. Lisa admits she drove a lot, left town often, and filled up other people's cars. Confessions that thicken the courtroom tension as Betsy shakes her head in dismay. This is where Judge Judy's wisdom shines. She advises Betsy not to sue her 20-year-old daughter, but to cancel the card immediately, a practical solution. If you know your child is scamming, taking cash, or filling up others' cars, act like a parent, cancel the card, she says, her voice blending compassion with firmness, stressing that lawsuits don't fix family issues. Betsy persists, saying she's tried helping Lisa for years, but Lisa has a history of irresponsibility, including losing thousands of dollars in household items, perhaps from parties or bad friends. She sues to make Lisa accountable, a noble goal. But Judge Judy counters that Betsy's initial aim was for Lisa to finish high school, which Lisa didn't, perhaps due to dropping out or personal issues. Kids sometimes disappoint parents, Judge Judy says softly, and suing isn't how you fix a 20-year-old. Let her grow up and learn from mistakes. Turning to Lisa, she adds, "You need to grow up and take responsibility for your life." Lisa, her voice small and possibly tearful, says, "I'm sorry, and I'm really sorry," for using and misusing the card, a poignant moment. The ruling on the credit card. Judge Judy declares it's impossible to pinpoint the extent of misuse since Lisa may have had initial permission, so the claim is dismissed legally under 15 U.S. Code 1643. Liability for unauthorized charges is capped at $50, but with family and prior permission, courts often deny full restitution. This case mirrors many small claims, where judges prioritize education over fines, especially in family disputes to avoid further rifts. If Lisa's theft were proven, it could lead to criminal charges under state law, but Judge Judy opts for humanity, keeping mother and daughter from battling over money, encouraging dialogue instead. Moving to the second issue, the car engine damage. A further testament to Lisa's irresponsibility, Betsy says she lent Lisa the car for commuting, a motherly gesture. But one day, Lisa and friends were driving when they heard a knocking sound from the engine, like the car was crying for help. Lisa claims she checked the oil, but when Donald later inspected it, the car was short over 4 quarts of oil, a significant deficit causing severe engine damage, likely requiring costly repairs. Yet they kept driving despite the worsening noise. A reckless choice typical of youth, showing Lisa's failure to grasp consequences. Betsy reclaimed the car because Lisa didn't maintain it. She wasn't allowed to let others drive, and was only to use it for school, work, or quick errands, not long out-of-town trips, as she did, perhaps joyriding or traveling with friends. Lisa counters defensively, "I added oil, and the car already had an oil leak, so it's not my fault." Betsy confirms she very specifically instructed Lisa to monitor the oil regularly, indicating she knew the car had issues but trusted her daughter. Judge Judy, sharp as ever, argues that instructing Lisa to check oil suggests a pre-existing problem, a logical point forcing Betsy to concede, and Lisa falls silent, to lighten the mood. Judge Judy shares a personal anecdote. "I damaged my father's car at 30 due to similar negligence, but my parents didn't sue me. They taught me by not lending it again, and that's the best way." This rare humane moment shows Judge Judy as not just a judge but a seasoned storyteller with relatable experiences enriching her rulings. The ruling on the car. Judge Judy dismisses the claim. If a child is irresponsible with your car, don't lend it again. That's it. Goodbye, she says, her tone firm yet not harsh, emphasizing the practical lesson. Legally, in car lending cases, owners can sue borrowers for negligence under common tort law, especially for failure to maintain, like low oil. But if the owner knew the borrower was careless, as Betsy knew Lisa's history from the card issue, they might face negligent entrustment claims, a principle in most states where owners share responsibility for entrusting vehicles to unreliable people. This case underscores that small claims courts often favor practical resolutions over monetary awards in family disputes, avoiding deeper rifts. Post-ruling, Lisa feels bad for misusing her mother's card and agrees with Judge Judy that her mother shouldn't have sued, perhaps a step toward reconciliation. An outside voice, maybe an audience member or expert, suggests holding kids accountable earlier, through guidance rather than court. The big lesson: families need clear communication and boundaries, not courtroom battles. This case prompts reflection on parenting discipline or punishment. Judge Judy chooses discipline, cementing her iconic status in teaching conflict resolution. Now, on to the second case, Adams v. Trimble, a tale of broken love and shirked duties. The plaintiff is Kavina Adams, a 45-year-old woman with a resilient demeanor recovering from total knee replacement surgery. She moves with difficulty, her voice resolute, her eyes revealing deep betrayal. The defendant is Sam Trimble, 45, a chef with a sturdy frame, his face a mix of remorse and justification. Kavina's former boyfriend. The case centers on Kavina suing Sam for $500 in unpaid rent and living expenses. Sam claims Kavina locked him out after he went on a 3-day drinking binge, a detail exposing betrayal in their romance. The case opens with both parties sworn in, the air thick with drama like a romantic tragedy. They met when Sam was a bus driver, and he proposed to Kavina. A romantic start now turned sour, before Kavina's major knee surgery, requiring lengthy recovery. They agreed to move into a friend's house, another bus driver with an oral contract. Sam would cover all expenses and care for Kavina during recovery. A promise straight out of a love story. Kavina had surgery the next day and Sam paid February's rent, showing initial good faith, perhaps driven by love. But then everything collapsed, leading to this lawsuit. Deep character analysis. Kavina represents strong yet vulnerable women in love. At 45, facing serious health issues, trusting Sam was a huge gamble, especially when immobilized post-surgery. Sam embodies middle-aged men with personal demons, alcohol and drug addiction, irresponsibility, and a complex past with an ex-wife and kids. Their relationship typifies unmarried U.S. couples, where oral agreements can be legally binding with evidence. Judge Judy starts by probing the relationship, her voice cutting. He proposed to you, then abandoned you while you were immobilized. That's how a man acts. A question making Sam bow his head and Kavina nod in agreement. Legally, in states like California, non-marital cohabitation agreements, Marvin agreements, can be enforced if oral and supported by evidence of intent to provide financial support, per the landmark 1976 Marvin v. Marvin case. This forms the legal backbone of this case, where Sam's oral promise is central. The drama peaks when Sam completely disappeared in March on payday, a betrayal leaving Kavina immobilized post-surgery without food, and Sam took the only cell phone, isolating her completely, forcing reliance on neighbors or friends. Later, Kavina discovered Sam's substance abuse issues, a shocking revelation, as she hadn't suspected. She sues for $500 in rent for the next month, claiming Sam breached their agreement, leaving her to cover costs. Sam admits he agreed to care for Kavina until recovery, but cites personal issues, a car accident, job loss, and no pay for most of February, a plausible but insufficient excuse for abandonment. He went drinking for 3 days and didn't return, likely due to addiction relapse. Returning after 3 days, Kavina refused him entry, cursing him in anger. A natural reaction, he stayed with his ex-wife, whose family recorded Kavina saying Sam was on crack and barred from the house, evidence of the chaos. Kavina confirms Sam returned after 3 days. She was bedridden, and the landlord friend, Mark, informed her she barred Sam out of deep betrayal. Sam adds that the next day Kavina publicly cursed him at his bus company, and later he spoke to Mark since Kavina was absent, a chaotic sequence showing both lost their cool. Judge Judy interrogates fiercely in her style. What did you expect? Vanishing for 3 days, leaving her immobilized post-surgery? Her anger is understandable, and you deserve the cursing. She notes Sam could have called police if he believed he had a right to enter, per U.S. tenant laws granting access to leaseholders. Ruling the oral agreement is binding. Sam owes $500. Sam objects, asking if he must endure verbal abuse. Judge Judy retorts, her anger doesn't exempt you from the contract. You breached first, face the consequences. Deep analysis. Sam's disappearance reveals addiction, a major U.S. issue with over 46 million addicts per CDC data. Kavina's anger is justified. But Sam's story shows addiction's complexity, not an excuse but context. Judge Judy acknowledges yet doesn't forgive. Legally, oral contracts are enforceable with consideration here, care for financial support. This ruling reinforces that romantic oral promises can be legally binding. Post-ruling, Kavina shares that a day after surgery, Sam crashed the car and went to Abbott Hospital, vowing to quit alcohol and drugs, shocking her, revealing his secrecy. Sam accuses Kavina of aggression, citing a restraining order, and admits mutual harassment, a sad end to their love story. These two cases, through Judge Judy's lens, teach us about trust, responsibility, and justice in family and love. From the generational clash of Hartman, Teal to the betrayal and addiction in Adams, Trimble, U.S. law protects but demands clear evidence. Reflect, families are for forgiveness, but responsibility is key to avoiding court. Sleep well, dream of justice and healthier relationships. Tonight, we're diving deep into a single, explosive case straight from the hallowed halls of Judge Judy's courtroom. Crenshaw versus Knox, case number 75. This isn't just a legal spat over money. It's a raw, heart-wrenching saga of a shattered relationship, false accusations, and a man's fight to reclaim his dignity. Rodney Crenshaw, a 43-year-old maintenance worker, is suing his former live-in girlfriend, Tracy Knox, a 32-year-old receptionist, for wrongfully causing his arrest on domestic violence charges, costing him $1,779 in legal fees and lost property. But the true stakes are far greater: a fractured bond, a tarnished reputation, and the search for truth in a web of lies. In this extended episode, we'll dissect every twist and turn with surgical precision. From the heated late-night argument to the questionable police report, from the discarded possessions to the courtroom showdown, we'll tie each detail to real-world United States law, domestic violence statutes, property rights, and the weight of oral testimony, while delving into the psychology of the characters, their motivations, and the contradictions that unravel their stories. With Judge Judy's unrelenting, incisive style, we'll expose the drama, challenge the lies, and deliver a narrative that's as gripping as a blockbuster film, yet soothing enough for bedtime. Picture yourself seated in the courtroom gallery, feeling the tension crackle, but wrapped in the comfort of your warm bed, with soft jazz as your guide. This podcast is designed to enthrall without stealing your sleep. It will lead you into dreams with the satisfaction of justice served and a quiet reflection on the fragility of trust and the power of accountability. Case number 75, Crenshaw versus Knox. The parties step forward, and the courtroom hums with tension, like a storm gathering in a cramped apartment on a sleepless night. Rodney Crenshaw, 43 years old, stands tall but visibly wary, his maintenance worker's hands clasped tightly, his face etched with frustration and a flicker of betrayal. His eyes carry the weight of a man who's been wronged, yet he holds himself with quiet dignity. Across from him is Tracy Knox, 32, a receptionist with a guarded posture, her eyes darting nervously, as if bracing for a verbal onslaught or hiding something deeper. They're sworn in, and Judge Judy, perched like a hawk with her piercing gaze and trademark intensity, wastes no time cutting to the core. Rodney claims Tracy falsely accused him of domestic violence, specifically alleging he bit her finger, leading to his wrongful arrest, $1,250 in legal fees, and the loss of personal property worth $529. Tracy, defensive and evasive, insists her actions were justified, setting the stage for a clash of narratives. This isn't just about money, it's about truth, trust, and the fallout of a relationship gone sour. Rodney takes the stand first, his voice steady but simmering with indignation, like a man who's held his story in too long. He paints a vivid picture. He and Tracy lived together from 1997 to December 2000 in a shared home with Tracy's two children, aged 13 and 7, forming a blended family. They split bills, shared responsibilities, and built a life together, or so Rodney believed. On the night of December 1st, 2000, Rodney was home, watching the kids while Tracy was out until the early hours. She stumbled in at 4 a.m, and when Rodney asked where she'd been, a reasonable question for a partner, sparks flew. "She told me she didn't owe me an explanation," Rodney recounts, his tone rising with the sting of that moment. The argument escalated quickly, and Tracy stormed into the kitchen, grabbed a knife and pointed it at him, shouting, "Don't touch me!" Rodney insists he never laid a finger on her, his voice firm with conviction. In her fury, Tracy gripped the knife so tightly she cut her own finger, a detail that becomes pivotal. She then bolted to the hallway, called the police, and returned with officers in tow. setting the stage for Rodney's nightmare. The police separated them, Tracy in one room, Rodney in another, as protocol demands in domestic calls. When the officers emerged, they delivered a bombshell. "You're under arrest." Stunned, Rodney asked, "For what?" Their reply, "Because you bit her." Rodney's jaw dropped, his voice booming with disbelief. "I'm no gangster! I don't bite women!" The accusation is so specific, so visceral, it feels like a personal insult. He denies any history of domestic violence arrests, emphasizing a clean record since a 1995 case and a 1998 acquittal, underscoring his stability. The arrests led to jail time, a court appearance, and a legal battle that upended his life. Distrusting the public defender, based on prior brushes with the justice system. Where he learned the hard way about inadequate representation, Rodney hired a private attorney. He paid $950 in cash and owes $350 more, producing receipts to prove it. The charges were ultimately dismissed, but the damage was done. Legal fees piled up, personal property was lost or discarded, and his reputation took a hit. Let's pause to unpack Rodney's perspective in the broader context. At 43, Rodney is a blue-collar worker, likely used to fixing things, buildings, machines, maybe even family dynamics. His decision to hire a private lawyer shows a savvy understanding of the legal system, not born of wealth but of hard-earned experience. His outrage at the biting accusation feels authentic. Biting is an unusual, almost theatrical claim, and his denial carries the weight of someone insulted by its absurdity. The knife incident is critical. If Tracy cut herself, as Rodney claims, it flips her victim narrative and paints her as the aggressor, or at least reckless. Psychologically, Rodney seems less like an abuser and more like a man blindsided by a partner's betrayal, fighting not just for money but to clear his name and restore his dignity. The broader context of their relationship adds depth. Living together for 3 years, raising Tracy's children, and sharing expenses suggest a committed partnership, not a casual fling. Rodney's role as a caregiver that night, watching the kids while Tracy was out, shows his investment in the family. Tracy's late return and refusal to explain hint at underlying tensions, perhaps infidelity, mistrust, or personal struggles. This case reflects a common American story, blended families navigating shared responsibilities, where breakdowns in communication can escalate into legal battles. Legally, this case hinges on domestic violence laws and the consequences of false reporting. In the United States, domestic violence is governed by state statutes such as California's Penal Code Section 273.5, which criminalizes willful infliction of corporal injury on a cohabitant, carrying penalties up to 7 years in prison and fines. False police reports under Penal Code Section 148.5 are misdemeanors, punishable by up to 6 months in jail, or fines up to $1,000. In small claims court, the focus shifts to civil remedies, like Rodney's claim for legal fees and property damages. If Tracy's accusation was baseless, Rodney's arrest could be deemed wrongful, entitling him to compensation for costs incurred, including attorney fees and lost property. Nationally, false domestic violence reports are rare. Studies estimate only 2 to 10% of cases, but when they occur they can devastate the accused, as Rodney's story suggests. Judge Judy, with her knack for sniffing out deception, will turn her laser focus to Tracy's testimony next, and the cracks in her story are about to show. Now Tracy takes the stand, and the tension in the courtroom spikes, like a scene from a high-stakes drama where the truth hangs by a thread. Judge Judy's eyes narrow, her voice sharp as she zeroes in on a glaring issue. Why did Tracy skip her court date for the domestic violence case? Tracy responds, her voice wavering. They told me I didn't need to show up as long as I had the domestic violence case against him. Judge Judy pounces like a lion, holding up a summons as evidence, proving Tracy was notified of the hearing. A temporary restraining order was issued on December 2nd, the day after Rodney's arrest on December 1st, meaning Tracy appeared in court to secure it but vanished for the follow-up hearing. You knew about the restraining order, and it expired after you missed the next hearing. Judge Judy snaps, her tone slicing through Tracy's flimsy excuse. Tracy admits she missed the date, her voice faltering under the pressure, then pivots to claim Rodney harassed her at work, justifying her avoidance. Judge Judy counters with a verbal jab. That's all the more reason to show up and extend the order. If he was such a threat, why dodge court? The question hangs in the air, exposing Tracy's inconsistency. Tracy recounts the night of December 1st, her version starkly different from Rodney's. She'd been out, likely socializing, and returned home to find Rodney, not watching her kids as he claimed, but ready to confront her. He asked me all kinds of questions, but I didn't owe him answers, she says defiantly, her tone suggesting a woman fed up with control. Their relationship was already on shaky ground, she adds, with prior arguments signaling deep discord. She claims Rodney wanted to get physical, prompting her to grab a knife from the kitchen for self-defense, citing his habit of getting physical in the past. Fleeing the house, she says Rodney chased her, grabbed her, and in the struggle her finger ended up in his mouth, requiring 2 tetanus shots for the injury. Judge Judy examines Tracy's medical documents, only to clarify they're not hospital records, but Tracy's statements to police, recorded in the report as, victim stated she had a verbal argument with the suspect, which turned violent when he began pushing her. Judge Judy spots the contradiction faster than a speeding bullet. Tracy initially said Rodney would get physical, implying it didn't happen that night, but the police report claims he began pushing her, implying it did. Pressed by Judge Judy's relentless questioning, Tracy insists both statements are true, then doubles down, saying Rodney had a habit of getting physical. Judge Judy drills deeper. You told police he pushed you and bit you that night. Tracy nods. He really did push me. Yet her story shifts again when asked why she skipped court. First claiming, they told me I didn't need to go. Then admitting, I chose not to go. Her contradictions pile up like a house of cards in a windstorm, and the courtroom feels like a pressure cooker ready to burst. The property dispute adds another layer of contention, revealing Tracy's actions post-arrest. Rodney seeks the return of his belongings, a weight set his and a friend's, a collection of CDs, a kitchenware set worth $279, a 27-inch television worth $250, and his clothing. Tracy admits tossing the weight set, dismissing it as junk and refusing to store other people's stuff after Rodney's arrest, a move that feels spiteful rather than practical. She claims no memory of the CDs, a vague response that raises Judge Judy's eyebrows. For the kitchenware and TV, Tracy acknowledges Rodney bought them, but insists they were gifts, though she holds the receipts. Rodney confirms his nephew retrieved his clothes, which Tracy handed over without issue. Judge Judy, skeptical, questions Tracy's haste in discarding Rodney's items after 3 years of shared living and bills, dismantling her. Gift claim with a piercing glare. You lived together, shared expenses, and the minute he's gone, you throw out his things. She asks, her voice dripping with disbelief. Psychologically, Tracy's shifting narrative suggests panic, guilt, or calculated manipulation. At 32, a single mother of 2, she may have felt trapped in a deteriorating relationship, grabbing the knife out of fear, defiance, or a need to assert control. Her failure to appear in court in inconsistent excuses, blaming others, then admitting her choice, hint at a fear of being exposed or an attempt to avoid accountability. The property dispute reveals a pettiness that borders on vindictive. Tossing Rodney's weights immediately after his arrest feels like an act of retribution, not practicality. Rodney, meanwhile, comes across as a man wronged, his anger tempered by a desire for fairness, not revenge. His detailed account and receipts lend him credibility, while Tracy's evasiveness undermines hers. Legally, this case touches on several key areas. Domestic violence laws like California's Penal Code Section 273.5 protect victims but require evidence of physical injury, which Tracy's laceration doesn't clearly support. False reporting under Penal Code Section 148.5 carries misdemeanor penalties, but in small claims, Rodney seeks civil damages for legal fees and property loss. Property rights for cohabitants are governed by common law, and wrongful disposal of another's belongings constitutes conversion, a tort allowing recovery of the item's value. If Tracy's accusation was intentionally false, Rodney could theoretically pursue a malicious prosecution claim. Though small claims courts limit remedies to tangible losses like the $1,250 in legal fees and $520 $9 in property. Nationally, false domestic violence reports are statistically low. Studies suggest 2 to 10%, but their impact, as Rodney's ordeal shows, can be devastating, affecting employment, reputation, and mental health. Judge Judy's next move will be to untangle this mess and deliver justice. Judge Judy takes command of the courtroom, her voice a masterful blend of authority, exasperation, and moral clarity as she unravels the tangled web of testimony with the precision of a seasoned detective. She begins by grilling Tracy on her contradictions, her tone sharp as a blade. You lived with this man for 3 years, shared bills, raised children together, and the second he's arrested, you throw out his belongings. She dismisses Tracy's claim of paying rent alone, pointing to their shared financial history as evidence of a partnership, not a one-sided arrangement. Turning to Rodney's background, Judge Judy probes his criminal record, noting no incarceration since 1995, except a 1998 case where he was acquitted. This confirms Rodney's role as a contributing member of the household in 1998, 1999, and 2000, bolstering his credibility as a reliable partner, not a freeloader or aggressor. The core issue is the arrest, and Judge Judy delivers her analysis with surgical precision. She concludes there was no basis for Rodney's detention on December 1st. Tracy admitted Rodney didn't touch her before she grabbed the knife, yet told police he pushed and bit her, a lie exposed by her own contradictory words. Critically, Tracy never disclosed to police that she wielded a knife, a dangerous weapon, which undermines her victim narrative. The bite claim collapses under scrutiny. Hospital records show a laceration, not a bite mark, supporting Rodney's assertion that Tracy cut herself, gripping the knife too tightly in her rage. Judge Judy emphasizes Tracy's failure to appear in court as a fatal blow to her credibility. You knew about the hearing, got a restraining order, then skipped the follow-up. Why? Because you knew your story wouldn't hold up. Tracy's shifting excuses, first claiming she was told not to go, then admitting she chose not to, cement her unreliability, painting a picture of someone dodging accountability. The property dispute is equally damning for Tracy. Judge Judy rules that the kitchenware, valued at $279, and the television, worth $250, were clearly purchased by Rodney, not given as gifts. Tracy's claim of ownership, backed only by possession of receipts, doesn't convince the judge, who notes the purchases were made in November, just weeks before the breakup, hardly the timing for heartfelt gifts. The Waitset's disposal is particularly egregious. You threw out his property the moment he was gone, after years of living together. Judge Judy asks, her voice a mix of incredulity and reprimand. The CDs remain unresolved due to Tracy's vague, "I don't recall." But Rodney's clothing was returned, sparing one point of contention. Judge Judy's ruling here is rooted in fairness. Cohabitants have no right to unilaterally dispose of another's property, and Tracy's actions constitute conversion, a civil wrong. Judge Judy's moral stance is a highlight, delivered with the gravitas of a sermon. You did a bad thing, Miss Knox, using the legal system to protect your position. Domestic violence is serious, and victims deserve protection. But lying to police and abusing the system undermines everyone who needs it. Her tone balances sensitivity to genuine victims with condemnation of manipulation, a hallmark of her approach. She acknowledges the gravity of domestic violence. Studies show 1 in 4 women in the United States face abuse, per the CDC, but stresses that false claims, though rare, erode trust in the system, harming true victims and the accused alike. Rodney's ordeal, arrest, jail, legal costs, illustrates the real-world impact of such lies. The ruling is clear and decisive. Rodney is awarded $1,250 for legal fees, covering his attorney costs, $950 paid, $350 owed, $279 for the kitchenware, and $250 for the television, totaling $1,779. Legally, this aligns with small claims principles: compensatory damages for wrongful arrest costs, legal fees, and conversion of property lost. In California, malicious prosecution claims could apply if Tracy's false report was intentional, though small claims courts cap remedies at monetary losses, excluding punitive damages or emotional distress. Domestic violence laws protect victims but require evidence, and Tracy's laceration doesn't substantiate a bite, weakening her case. False reporting, while a misdemeanor, is rarely prosecuted unless egregious, but civil suits like Rodney's offer recourse for tangible harms, as seen here. Post-ruling, Rodney is visibly elated, his face breaking into a relieved smile as he proclaims, "I told the truth and it came out." He reiterates the absurdity of the biting claim, requiring both upper and lower teeth marks, which Tracy couldn't prove, and accuses her of lying to vilify him and have him jailed. She cut herself holding that knife too tight. He insists, his voice carrying the triumph of vindication. Tracy, meanwhile, offers no comment, her silence deafening, suggesting shame, defiance, or resignation. Psychologically, Rodney's victory restores his dignity, a man wronged by a system meant to protect but misused against him. Tracy's silence may reflect guilt or an inability to face her unraveling narrative. This case underscores the delicate balance of domestic violence laws. They must shield victims while guarding against misuse, a line Judge Judy navigates with precision. Reflecting on the characters, Rodney emerges as a resilient figure, a working-class man who fought for justice despite the odds, his receipts and clear testimony grounding his case. Tracy, by contrast, seems caught in a web of her own making, perhaps driven by fear, anger, or a need to control a failing relationship. Her lies and actions backfired, costing her credibility in the case. The children, though absent from the courtroom, loom large. Their presence in the home suggests Tracy's stress as a single mother, which may have fueled her desperation, while Rodney's role as a caregiver hints at his commitment, now overshadowed by betrayal. This case is a microcosm of modern relationships, blended families, shared burdens, and the explosive fallout when trust erodes. Let's step back to explore the broader implications of Crenshaw versus Knox, a case that resonates far beyond the courtroom. At its core, this dispute is about trust, how it's built, broken, and fought for in the aftermath. Rodney and Tracy's story reflects countless American households where cohabitation, blended families, and shared responsibilities create complex dynamics. Their 3-year relationship, raising 2 children and splitting bills, was a partnership that demanded mutual respect. But a single night's escalation, a late return, a heated argument, a knife, shattered it. This case highlights the fragility of trust in intimate relationships, where misunderstandings or hidden resentments can spiral into legal battles with lasting consequences. From a legal perspective, Crenshaw versus Knox is a textbook example of the challenges in domestic violence cases. In the United States, laws like California's Penal Code Section 273.5 are designed to protect victims swiftly, often with temporary restraining orders issued based on initial testimony, as Tracy secured. But this speed can lead to errors, especially when allegations lack corroboration. False reports, while statistically rare 2 to 10% per academic studies, can devastate the accused, as Rodney experienced, arrested, jailed, and forced to spend $1,250 to clear his name. The civil remedy in small claims court, compensation for legal fees and property, offers partial justice, but the emotional toll, from public humiliation to family strain, lingers. Tracy's failure to appear in court is telling. It suggests either fear of exposure or indifference, both undermining her credibility and highlighting the importance of accountability in legal proceedings. The property dispute adds another dimension, reflecting common issues in cohabitation breakups. Without a formal lease or contract, cohabitants rely on common law principles to protect personal property. Tracy's disposal of Rodney's weight set and retention of his kitchenware and television constitute conversion, a tort allowing recovery of the items' values here, $529. Her claim that they were gifts lacks evidence, as Judge Judy noted, especially given the timing of the purchases. This underscores a key lesson. Clear communication about ownership in shared households can prevent disputes. In the United States, cohabitation agreements, written or oral, can govern property rights, as seen in cases like Marvin versus Marvin, 1976, though proving intent without documentation, as in this case, relies heavily on testimony and credibility. Judge Judy's ruling is a masterclass in balancing legal precision with moral clarity. Her sensitivity to domestic violence, she acknowledges its prevalence, with 1 in 4 women affected, per CDC data, grounds her condemnation of Tracy's actions. By lying to police and abusing the system, Tracy not only wronged Rodney, but also risked undermining legitimate victims. A point Judge Judy drives home with passion. Her ruling, awarding $1,779, restores Rodney's losses while sending a message. The legal system is a shield, not a weapon. This resonates with broader societal debates about balancing victim protection with due process, a tension that plays out daily in courtrooms across America. Psychologically, the case reveals the complexities of human behavior under stress. Rodney's calm, evidence-backed testimony suggests a man who's learned to navigate adversity, perhaps from his prior legal experiences. His choice to hire a private attorney, despite the cost, reflects a determination to protect his future, a trait of resilience. Tracy, by contrast, appears driven by impulse or desperation. Her late-night return, refusal to explain, and escalation with a knife suggest a woman at her breaking point, possibly overwhelmed by parenting work or a failing relationship. Her false accusation may have been a panicked bid for control or protection, but her silence post-ruling hints at regret or defiance. The children, though not present, are a silent force. Their needs likely shape Tracy's stress, while Rodney's role as their caregiver underscores his investment, now tainted by betrayal. This case also invites reflection on societal issues. Domestic violence laws, while critical, can be misused, especially in contentious breakups. The National Domestic Violence Hotline reports over 1 million calls annually, but false claims, though rare, strain resources and trust. Rodney's experience, arrested without evidence, forced to fight for freedom, mirrors stories of men and women caught in similar traps, highlighting the need for thorough investigations. The property dispute, meanwhile, reflects the chaos of cohabitation breakups, where emotional decisions, like tossing a weight set, lead to legal consequences. Judge Judy's approach, firm yet human, offers a model for resolving such conflicts. Prioritize truth, hold people accountable, and protect the system's integrity. Crenshaw versus Knox is a powerful reminder of the stakes in personal relationships and the law's role in untangling their fallout. Rodney's fight to clear his name and reclaim his property exposes the pain of false accusations, while Tracy's contradictions reveal the cost of dishonesty. Judge Judy's ruling, $1,779 for legal fees and lost property, delivers justice with a lesson: trust is fragile, and abusing the legal system has consequences. United States law protects victims but demands evidence, and this case shows the balance between safeguarding rights and preventing misuse. As you drift off, reflect on the power of truth and accountability in your own relationships. Sleep well, dreaming of fairness and the strength to stand up for what's right. Welcome back to the podcast where real-life courtroom dramas come alive, designed to captivate as you drift towards sleep. Tonight, we dive into a double feature case from Judge Judy's courtroom: Aarons versus Payton and Spear versus Aarons. Ben Aarons, a 21-year-old student, sues Brian Payton, an 18-year-old football player, for a brutal assault during a drunken night, costing $5,000 in medical bills. Adam Spear sues Ben for damaging his car that same night, seeking $1,500. We'll dissect every detail, tying it to United States law, assault, property damage, and witness credibility, while channeling Judge Judy's sharp, humane style. Picture yourself in the courtroom, tension crackling, yet safe in bed with jazz as your guide. The courtroom crackles with tension as case number 1, Aarons versus Payton, begins. Ben Aarons, 21, a lanky college student, steps forward, his eyes shadowed with trauma and defensiveness, his voice unsteady from a night he struggles to recall. Across from him stands Brian Payton, 18, a broad-shouldered football player, his posture calm but resolute, a mix of remorse and justification in his gaze. Judge Judy, perched like an eagle, her eyes sharp as knives, dives in. Ben claims Brian assaulted him at 3 a.m. on December 18, 2004, in a Hilton Hotel parking lot in Coral, Oregon, leaving him with a concussion, a possible dislocated cheekbone, and over $5,000 in medical bills. Brian admits to punching Ben but insists it was provoked, setting up a clash of stories steeped in alcohol, ego, and chaos. Ben takes the stand, his voice wavering, tinged with frustration and the haze of a concussion. He sets the scene. It's 10 o'clock at night, and he's at a friend's birthday party near the Hilton with 8 people, including his friend Brown, who later sparks trouble. There was a lot of drinking. Ben admits, specifying he drank only Miller Lite beer, though Judge Judy later cites a police report where he admitted to hard liquor. "I wasn't drunk," he insists, his tone defensive. Just drinking. The party spills into the parking lot, where Ben's group lingers by a fence separating a friend's house from the hotel. 3 girls exit the Hilton, and Ben's group calls them over, starting a casual, if rowdy, conversation. Moments later, 3 or 4 men, including Brian, emerge from the hotel, and Ben senses aggression. "Brian was in my face, acting like he wanted to fight," Ben says, claiming Brian accused him of staring and making a Hitler salute. An odd, inflammatory charge Ben denies with rising indignation. "I don't know what he's talking about. I'd never do that." Ben says he mimicked a gesture Brian made, thinking it meant, "It's okay, no problem," and they shook hands, exchanged names, and seemed to diffuse the tension. Brian's group left to get food and beer, while Ben stayed by the curb, chatting with the girls who soon returned to the hotel. Trouble reignited when Brian returned, and a verbal spat flared between Brian and Brown, possibly over Brian not bringing food. Ben, trying to play peacemaker, stepped between them, pushing them apart. That's where my memory stops. Ben says, his voice dropping, eyes distant. "Next thing, I got hit in the face. I had a serious concussion, lost 1.5 pints of blood, and hit my head on the concrete." He offers photos of his injuries, bruised face, swollen cheek, and mentions a possible dislocated cheekbone, though his recollection is patchy due to the trauma. Judge Judy pounces, holding up the police report. "You told police you drank hard liquor, not just beer," she says, her voice cutting. Ben backtracks, admitting he mentioned liquor, but insists he wasn't falling down drunk. She presses on about his hands, which the report noted had scrapes and redness consistent with punching metal, like Adam Spear's car. Ben denies hand injuries, claiming the redness was from stretcher straps, and produces a medical report to back it up. When asked about punching the car, he says, "I don't remember," but Judge Judy's relentless pressure. "You were drunk, Ben, and you punched that car." Draws a hesitant, "Maybe." Ben keeps interrupting, trying to deflect, earning sharp rebukes. "Listen to me, Ben. You were so drunk you wouldn't know who was who if they bit you on the backside." His defensive posture softens, but his attempts to explain falter under her scrutiny. Let's analyze Ben's perspective. At 21, Ben is at that reckless college age where nights blur into bad decisions. His foggy memory and defensive tone suggest genuine trauma from the assault, but his contradictions, denying liquor, then admitting it, denying hand injuries, then hedging, undermine his credibility. The Hitler salute accusation is bizarre, and his denial feels plausible, but his peacemaker claim clashes with evidence of his drunken antics. Psychologically, Ben seems torn between victimhood and guilt, seeking justice for his injuries but struggling to own his role. Legally, assault and battery under Oregon laws, Oregon Revised Statutes 163.6e requires intentional or reckless harm, and Ben's injuries, concussion, blood loss, support a civil claim for medical costs. But Judge Judy's focus on his intoxication as the proximate cause hints at comparative negligence, where his actions may reduce his recovery. The context is critical: a late night college party, alcohol flowing freely, and young men posturing in a parking lot. The Hilton setting near a friend's house suggests a transient, chaotic environment where boundaries blur. Ben's group, loud and drunk, likely provoked irritation, while Brian's group, displaced by a dorm closure, carried their own tensions. This case mirrors countless alcohol-fueled incidents, with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention noting over 1 million alcohol-related injuries annually in the United States. Brian Payton takes the stand, his demeanor calm but resolute, like an athlete facing a tough play. At 18, he's younger but physically dominant, a football player staying at the Hilton. Due to a dorm closure for a university event, He insists he didn't drink, emphasizing his clear-headedness. Brian's story aligns with Ben's initially. He and his friends exit the Hilton and see Ben's group by the fence. Ben, he claims, stared aggressively and made a Hitler salute, prompting Brian to confront him. I told him to stop, Brian says, his tone direct but not malicious. They shook hands, and Brian's group left to get food. Returning, he says Ben's group was yelling, and Ben was punching Adam Spear's car, setting off the alarm. Wood told him to stop multiple times, Brian says, but he kept going. When Brian approached, Ben spun around, fist raised, and Brian, feeling threatened, punched him twice in the face. Ben fell, hitting his head on the concrete. I was shocked he went down so hard, Brian admits. I didn't think I hit him that bad, but he was drunk. A female witness. One of the 3 girls from the Hilton delivers a compelling account, her voice clear and unwavering. Ben and his friends were yelling at us, asking our names, clearly very drunk, she says. She confirms Brian told Ben's group to leave them alone. After returning from getting food, she saw Ben punching the car, triggering the alarm. We all told him to stop, but he wouldn't, she says. When Brian approached, Ben turned quickly, fist up, and Brian struck him. Judge Judy nods approvingly. Your story is very coherent, and I have no reason to believe you're lying. The witness's final words are sharp. We didn't want anything to do with him or his drunk friends. A male witness, Ben's friend Not Brown, tries to defend Ben but stumbles. He claims Brian was headed all night, quoting him saying, "You guys are idiots. I could take 2 of you right now." He says Ben was sitting on the curb, drinking a beer, not looking at Brian, when Brian punched him unprovoked. He denies seeing Ben hit the car, but Judge Judy cuts him off, noting his story contradicts the police report and other witnesses. The report, corroborated by Mr. Norris, states Brian asked Ben to stop punching the car 3 times before striking him, and Ben's hand showed scrapes consistent with punching metal. Judge Judy grills Ben again. You told police you drank liquor and your hands were injured. Stop dancing around the truth. Ben flustered sticks to his, I don't recall, defense, but his credibility wanes. Judge Judy turns to Brian, her tone stern. You can't use physical force to protect someone else's property, Brian. The law doesn't allow it. She acknowledges Ben's provocative behavior, but stresses Brian's punches were excessive, given Ben's severe injuries. Psychologically, Brian seems impulsive but not cruel. His admission of shock at Ben's fall suggests he didn't intend serious harm. The female witness's clarity strengthens his account, while Ben's friend's inconsistencies weaken Ben's defense. Legally, Brian's actions constitute battery, Oregon Revised Statutes 163.6U, but Oregon's self-defense laws, Oregon Revised Statutes 161.29, allow force if one reasonably believes they're threatened. Ben's raised fist could justify Brian's reaction, but protecting property doesn't, making Brian liable for damages. The police report is pivotal. It confirms Ben's intoxication, hand injuries, and admission to drinking liquor, undermining his claim of clarity. Mr. Norris's statement aligns with Brian's, and the female witness's testimony seals the narrative. Ben's attempt to question why police didn't interview the girls falls flat. Judge Judy notes the report includes their accounts. Ben's final plea, I'm not Superman. I couldn't dent a car like that, draws a sarcastic quip from Judge Judy. You were drunk enough to try Ben. The second case, Spear versus Aarons, shifts to Adam Spear, who sues Ben for damaging his car during the same chaotic night. Adam, absent from the courtroom, submits a repair estimate for $1,500, citing dents and scratched paint on the ground. Ben, now the defendant, denies remembering the act, sticking to his I don't recall defense. Judge Judy, exasperated, presses, You were drunk, Ben, and you punched that car. You set off the alarm. The police report supports Adam's claim, noting Ben's hand injuries, scrapes and redness, consistent with punching metal. Brian and the female witness confirm Ben's actions, and even Ben's friend can't fully deny it, only saying he didn't see it. Judge Judy scolds Ben. You acted foolishly because you drank too much. You caused trouble, flirting with girls who weren't interested, loitering where you shouldn't, and damaging property. She points to the broader context. This is what happens when you drink too much, Ben. You act stupid, get into fights, and cause damage. Ben, visibly shaken, mumbles, "Maybe I hit it," but insists he doesn't believe he could cause such damage. Judge Judy retorts, "You don't need to be Superman to dent a car when you're drunk and reckless." Psychologically, Ben's denial reflects the haze of intoxication and perhaps shame. He wants to be seen as a victim, not an instigator. His contradictions and foggy memory suggest a struggle to reconcile his actions with his self-image. Adam, though absent, is a collateral victim, his car damaged in a millie he didn't witness. Legally, property damage under Oregon laws, Oregon Revised Statutes 164.25 allows recovery for intentional or reckless harm, and Ben's actions, punching a car while drunk, meet this threshold. The $1,500 estimate is reasonable for dents and paint, and Ben's weak defense, coupled with witness testimony and police evidence, seals his liability. The broader context paints a vivid picture: a college town, a late-night party, and young men caught in a cycle of bravado and alcohol. The Hilton parking lot, a liminal space between a friend's house and a hotel, amplifies the chaos, where drunken posturing meets impulsive violence. Ben's group, loud and intoxicated, likely irritated Brian's group, who were already displaced by a dorm closure. The girls, caught in the middle, became a flashpoint, the rejection fueling tension. This case reflects a broader societal issue: alcohol-related violence, with the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism reporting over 5 million young adults engaging in binge drinking annually, often leading to injuries or property damage. Judge Judy delivers her ruling with her trademark blend of authority and moral clarity, her voice slicing through the courtroom's tension. In Aarons versus Payton, she awards Ben $5,000 for unreimbursed medical bills, citing his lack of insurance and severe injuries. Concussion, blood loss, possible cheekbone damage. "You didn't deserve to be beaten, Ben," she says, "but your drunken behavior was the proximate cause of this mess. You flirted with girls who wanted nothing to do with you, loitered where you shouldn't, and acted foolishly." She turns to Brian. "You can't punch someone to protect a car, no matter how provoked. The law doesn't allow it." In Spear versus Aarons, she orders Ben to pay Adam $1,500 for car repairs, supported by the repair estimate, witness testimony, and police evidence of Ben's hand injuries. Legally, the rulings align with Oregon statutes for the assault. Brian's punches constitute battery, Oregon Revised Statutes 163.1 and CEDA. And while self-defense, Oregon Revised Statutes 161.209 could apply to Ben's raised fist using force to protect property exceeds legal bounds, making Brian liable for Ben's medical costs. Oregon's comparative negligence doctrine may reduce Ben's recovery due to his intoxication, but Judge Judy prioritizes his tangible losses. For the car, Ben's reckless damage, Oregon Revised Statutes 164.34-5 justifies Adam's claim, with the $1,500 estimate deemed reasonable. The concept of proximate cause is key. Ben's drinking set the chain of events in motion, but Brian's excessive response and Ben's property damage are distinct wrongs, each carrying liability. Nationally, alcohol-related incidents like this are rampant, with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reporting over 1 million alcohol-related injuries annually, costing billions in medical and legal expenses. Small claims courts, like Judge Judy's, focus on compensatory damages. Here, medical bills and car repairs, rather than punitive measures, but the rulings send a clear message: actions have consequences. Judge Judy's emphasis on Ben's intoxication reflects tort law's focus on causation, while her condemnation of Brian's violence underscores limits on self-defense. Post-ruling, Ben reflects, his voice subdued. "It was late, 3 in the morning. I'll rethink what I do with my life. It's bad when stuff like this happens." He adds, half joking, "I don't believe I could dent a car like that. If I did, I'm Superman." The female witness is blunt. "We didn't want anything to do with him or his drunk friends." Adam, via his statement, laments, "My car was damaged, paint scratched on the ground. I can't believe what happened." Judge Judy's parting words to Ben are stern. "Stop drinking, Ben. It makes you act foolishly and brings trouble." Let's step back to explore the broader implications of these cases, which resonate far beyond the courtroom. Aaron's versus Peyton and Spear versus Aaron's capture a snapshot of youthful recklessness, where alcohol, ego, and poor choices collide with devastating results. Ben's story is a cautionary tale of college excess, drinking past reason, posturing in a parking lot, and paying a physical and financial price. His concussion and medical bills are real, but his foggy memory and contradictions reveal a deeper struggle, owning his role in the chaos. Brian, at 18, represents the impulsive bravado of youth, his athletic prowess turning destructive when provoked. His punches, though triggered by Ben's actions, crossed a legal line, reflecting a broader issue of young men resorting to violence to assert control. Adam, the absent victim, is collateral damage, his car a casualty of a night he didn't witness, underscoring how reckless actions ripple outward. Psychologically, Ben's defensiveness masks shame and trauma. His claim of being a peacemaker clashes with his drunken antics, flirting, yelling, punching a car, suggesting a disconnect between his self-image and reality. His final reflection about rethinking his life hints at growth, though his Superman quip shows lingering denial. Brian's calm demeanor and admission of shock at Ben's fall suggest he acted impulsively, not maliciously. But his failure to de-escalate reveals a lack of maturity. The female witness, with her clear, unyielding testimony, embodies an outsider's perspective. Her rejection of Ben's group highlighting their disruptive behavior. Ben's friend, trying to defend him, comes off as loyal but unreliable, his contradictions exposing the bias of friendship under pressure. Legally, these cases highlight the complexities of alcohol-related disputes, Oregon's assault and battery laws, Oregon Revised Statutes 163.0 hold Brian accountable for Ben's injuries, as physical force to protect property isn't justified. Even if Ben's raised fist posed a threat, self-defense requires a reasonable belief of imminent harm, and Brian's response was disproportionate. For the property damage, Oregon's criminal mischief statute, Oregon Revised Statutes 164.345 supports Adams' claim, as Ben's reckless punching caused tangible harm. The police report, detailing Ben's intoxication, hand injuries, and witness accounts, grounds the rulings in evidence, a cornerstone of small claims courts. Nationally, alcohol-related violence is a pervasive issue, with the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism reporting over 5 million young adults engaging in binge drinking annually, leading to injuries, arrests, and property damage costing billions. The broader societal context is telling. College towns like Coral, Oregon are hotbeds for such incidents, where late-night parties and transient settings like hotel parking lots amplify risks. The girls' discomfort underscores a gendered dynamic, men posturing, women caught in the crossfire. Judge Judy's rulings: $5,000 for Ben's medical bills, $1,500 for Adam's car. Balance victim compensation with accountability. Reflecting her philosophy, the law protects but demands responsibility. Her advice to Ben: stop drinking, is a blunt call to action, addressing the root cause of the chaos. These cases also raise questions about justice and prevention. Small claims courts offer a venue for resolving tangible losses, but the emotional toll, Ben's trauma, Brian's regret, Adam's frustration, lingers. The United States legal system prioritizes evidence, as seen in the police report's weight, but struggles with gray areas like intoxication and provocation. Judge Judy's approach, cutting through lies, emphasizing consequences, offers a model for navigating such disputes, urging individuals to take control of their actions before they reach a courtroom. Aaron's versus Peyton and Spear versus Aaron's paint a vivid picture of a night spiraled out of control, where alcohol-fueled chaos, egos clashed, and consequences hit hard. Ben's injuries and Adam's damaged car are the tangible costs, but the deeper lesson is about accountability. Ben's drinking set the stage, Brian's punches escalated it, and both paid a price. Judge Judy's rulings: $5,000 for Ben's medical bills, $1,500 for Adam's car. Deliver justice with a warning: excess has consequences. United States law balances victim protection with responsibility, and this case shows the fine line between provocation and overreaction. As you drift off, reflect on the choices that shape our nights and the strength to own them. Sleep well, dreaming of fairness and wiser tomorrows. Welcome back to the podcast where real-life courtroom dramas unfold, designed to captivate your imagination as you drift towards sleep. Tonight, we dive into two explosive cases from Judge Judy's courtroom, Bledsoe versus High and Austin versus Atwater in Mayfield. These aren't just legal disputes. They're raw, emotional sagas of broken relationships, deception, and the fight for accountability. We'll dissect every twist, tying them to United States law, with Judge Judy's unrelenting style guiding us through the chaos. Picture yourself in the courtroom, tension crackling, yet safe in bed. Settle in, close your eyes, and let's enter the fray. The courtroom pulses with tension as case number 1, Bledsoe versus Ha, begins. Jared Bledsoe, a 30-something entrepreneur with a lean frame and a determined but frustrated demeanor, steps forward, his hands clenched, eyes burning with indignation. Across from him is Michelle Ha, a poised aesthetics student in her mid-20s, her guarded posture hinting at defiance or guilt. Judge Judy, perched like a hawk, her gaze piercing, dives in with her signature intensity. Jared claims Michelle, his ex-girlfriend, sabotaged his car paint protection film business by disconnecting a crucial phone line, costing him thousands in lost profits during 33 days of downtime. Michelle countersues for an unpaid phone bill of $342.48 and the return of her printer, valued at $150. This is a tale of love turned sore, broken promises, and the devastating fallout of personal and financial betrayal. Jared takes the stand, his voice steady but simmering with resentment, painting a vivid picture of their relationship and its collapse. He and Michelle were a couple for 2 years, sharing a home and dreams until their breakup in March 2004. Jared, struggling with poor credit from a prior business venture, couldn't secure a mobile phone, so Michelle added a second line to her singular account for him. With the explicit agreement he'd pay the bills, this phone became the lifeline of his new business, installing clear bra paint protection films for cars, a niche but growing market. Without a physical office, Jared relied on the number, printing it on business cards, flyers, and stationery, and advertising it to clients across California. It was my entire operation, he says, his tone urgent, almost pleading. Every lead, every booking came through that number. After their breakup, Jared continued paying the bills and using the phone without issue until December, when Michelle demanded her name be removed from the account, citing financial independence. They agreed to meet at a singular store to transfer the number to Jared's name, but Michelle didn't show. I tried 3 times, Jared says, frustration creeping into his voice. She kept making excuses. Work, school, traffic. Eventually, Michelle texted him, offering to let him keep the phone if he paid the bills, to which Jared replied, "I'm very grateful." He paid consistently until the final bill, from December to January, which he admits he skipped, expecting Michelle to cover it temporarily. When she canceled the line, incurring a $200 termination fee, Jared's business was left stranded for 33 days in February, unable to receive client calls. I lost contracts worth thousands, he claims, producing invoices showing missed bookings for car dealerships and private clients. His brother, Craig Bledsoe, a business partner, testifies he spent 45 minutes on the phone begging Michelle to keep the line active, detailing the financial strain. Lost revenue, delayed projects, and a damaged reputation in a competitive market. Judge Judy leans in, her voice sharp as a blade. "You're complaining she wasn't nice, aren't you?" Jared nods. "Yes. She knew cutting off that number would hurt my business. She did it to spite me." Judge Judy presses. "Did she have a legal obligation to give you that number?" Jared hesitates, his confidence faltering, then admits, "I guess not." His brother's testimony adds weight, but Judge Judy's eyes narrow when Jared admits he didn't pay the final bill. "Did she ever tell you you owe me a bill?" Jared shakes his head. "Never." Judge Judy snaps. "This isn't an acting audition, Mr. Bledsoe. Look at me when you speak." Jared, flustered, insists he offered to pay Michelle to keep the number, emphasizing its critical role. "I begged her," he says, "because that number was everything to us." Let's unpack Jared's perspective. As a small business owner, Jared's reliance on the phone was not just practical but existential. Losing it meant losing clients, credibility, and momentum in a cutthroat industry. His frustration feels authentic, but his failure to pay the final bill suggests negligence or post-breakup spite, weakening his case. Psychologically, Jared seems driven by ambition and resentment, believing Michelle's actions were retaliatory, rooted in their messy breakup. The backstory adds depth. Michelle later reveals that 2 cars were repossessed during their relationship, with Jared promising to pay her $250 monthly to cover losses, a promise he broke. She also accuses him of racking up credit card charges at strip clubs, fueling her distrust. Legally, this case hinges on contract law and torts. In California, oral agreements, like Jared's promise to pay phone bills, are enforceable under California Civil Code Section 1624, but Michelle's ownership of the account gave her the legal right to cancel it. Jared's claim for business losses may fall under tortious interference with business relations, but proving Michelle's intent to harm is a high bar without a contractual obligation tying her to his business. The broader context is telling. Post-breakup disputes over shared accounts are common, with the Federal Communications Commission reporting thousands of complaints annually about unauthorized account changes or cancellations. Jared's business, operating without a physical base, reflects the precarious nature of small enterprises, where a single disruption can spell disaster. The emotional undercurrent, betrayal, mistrust, amplifies the stakes, turning a phone bill into a battleground for personal grudges. Michelle takes the stand, her voice calm but edged with defiance, her posture rigid as if bracing for a fight. She confirms adding Jared to her phone plan as a favor during their relationship, with the clear condition he'd pay the bills. He was supposed to handle it, she says, her tone clipped. Post-breakup, she wanted her name off the account, tired of being financially tied to Jared. I agreed to meet him at Singular to transfer the number, she says, but he kept rescheduling, saying he was too busy with his business. I wasn't going to keep chasing him. She admits texting Jared that he could keep the phone if he paid, and he responded gratefully. But when he skipped the final bill, $342.48, she canceled the line, incurring a $200 termination fee. I wasn't going to keep paying for his business, she says, her voice firm. On the printer, Michelle claims it's hers, bought for her aesthetic studies, valued at $150, and accuses Jared of keeping it out of spite. Jared initially denies it's his, but when Judge Judy orders her bailiff to check receipts and model numbers, he admits it's in his possession and functional. Judge Judy's eyes narrow, her voice cutting. Why change your mind about the phone, Miss Ha? Michelle reveals the deeper wounds. During their relationship, 2 cars were repossessed after Jared used them recklessly, promising her $250 monthly to cover her share, a promise he never kept. He also ran up my credit card at strip clubs, she says, her voice trembling with anger. Everything started going bad. Judge Judy, unimpressed, counters. That's personal, not legal. Did you tell him he owed you a bill before canceling? Michelle admits she didn't directly, assuming he knew from their agreement. Judge Judy's tone sharpens. You canceled the phone knowing it was his business lifeline. That's not nice. But is it illegal? Michelle holds firm. I just want it out of his life. On the printer, Judge Judy grills Jared. If it's not yours, why keep it? Jared mumbles. I thought it was mine. But his weak defense crumbles when the bailiff confirms Michelle's receipt. Judge Judy snapped. You don't get to keep what's not yours, Mr. Bledsoe. Psychologically, Michelle's actions blend self-preservation with pettiness. Her decision to cancel the phone reflects a desire to sever ties, but her failure to directly demand the unpaid bill suggests passive-aggressive retaliation, possibly fueled by Jared's broken promises over the cars and credit card misuse. Jared's evasiveness about the printer points to spite, aligning with Michelle's claim of his selfish behavior. Legally, Michelle's cancellation was within her rights, as the phone account was in her name, but Jared's unpaid bill constitutes a breach of their oral contract under California Civil Code Section 1624. The printer dispute falls under conversion, a tort where wrongful retention of another's property is actionable, California Civil Code Section 3336. Michelle's receipts prove ownership, making Jared's retention unlawful. Nationally, disputes over shared accounts post-breakup are rampant, with the Better Business Bureau noting thousands of complaints about telecom disputes annually, often tied to emotional fallout. The repossessed cars and strip club charges add a layer of complexity, painting a picture of a relationship frayed by financial irresponsibility and mistrust. Michelle's decision to cancel the phone, while legally sound, feels like a calculated move to hit Jared where it hurt, his business. Jared's failure to pay the final bill, despite knowing its importance, suggests either financial strain or a tit-for-tat response to their fractured bond. This case is a microcosm of how personal grievances can escalate into legal battles, with emotions driving decisions as much as logic. Judge Judy delivers her ruling with surgical precision, her voice a blend of authority and exasperation. Ms. You had no legal obligation to let Mr. Bledsoe keep that phone number. It may be a moral issue, but not a legal one. Jared's claim for business losses, estimated at thousands due to 33 days of downtime, is dismissed. Without a contract tying Michelle to his business, he can't prove tortious interference, and his failure to pay the final bill undermines his claim of her malice. For Michelle's countersuit, Judge Judy orders Jared to pay $342.48 for the unpaid phone bill, excluding the $200 termination fee, as Michelle didn't explicitly demand payment before canceling. On the printer, Jared must return it, as Michelle's receipts and the bailiff's verification prove her ownership. The ruling aligns with California law. Oral contracts are binding, but Michelle's control over her account trumps Jared's business needs. Conversion law supports the printer's return, as Jared had no right to retain it. California Civil Code Section 3336. Jared's loss of 33 business days is financially devastating, but not legally actionable without evidence of Michelle's intentional harm. A high bar under tort law, Michelle's silence on the unpaid bill reflects poor communication, but Jared's failure to pay was a clear breach of their agreement. Judge Judy's moral jab, "This isn't about being nice, it's about the law," underscores the case's core. Personal grudges don't override legal rights. Post-ruling, Jared is visibly deflated, his shoulders slumped. "I wanted to settle this civilly," he says, "but she wouldn't outside court." Michelle, relieved but bitter, states, "I just wanted to cut all ties with him. The world's full of selfish people." Her final dig, "He loves attention, so I gave it to him," reveals lingering resentment. This case mirrors countless post-breakup disputes where emotional wounds fuel financial battles, with over 50,000 such cases filed annually in California alone. Case number 2, Austin versus Atwater and Mayfield, crackles with emotional intensity. Like a storm brewing in a quiet Georgia town, Courtney Austin, a retail worker in her late 20s, steps forward, her voice trembling with hurt and resolve, her eyes reflecting betrayal. Across from her, Fred Atwater, a maintenance technician with a guarded, almost defiant demeanor, and Sylvia Mayfield, his fiancée, a restaurant manager whose defensive posture hints at shame or loyalty. Courtney sues Fred and Sylvia for $150 in prison collect calls, plus $50 in gas money and $100 in lost wages from driving Sylvia to bail Fred out of jail. Fred and Sylvia countersue for $500, alleging harassment through emails, notes, and police visits. This is a story of misplaced trust, deception, and the messy fallout of friendship tangled with incarceration. Courtney takes the stand, her voice a mix of indignation and vulnerability, painting a vivid picture of her connection with Fred. They met when he left a flirtatious note on her car at her apartment complex in Georgia, where he worked maintenance. Courtney claims they dated briefly, a claim Fred denies, insisting they were just friends. Their relationship, however defined, took a turn when Fred landed in jail for drug abuse and assaulting Sylvia, a civil commitment, not a criminal charge, stemming from a mental health crisis. From jail, Fred called Courtney collect, asking her to connect him with his sister. Feeling pity for Fred, a Los Angeles transplant struggling in Georgia, Courtney accepted the first call, assuming it was a family matter. He sounded desperate, she says, her tone softening. She accepted 2 or 3 more calls before learning the sister Was Sylvia his fiancée? He lied to me. Courtney says, her voice sharpening with betrayal. Yet, remarkably, she accepted 35 more calls, each costing $2.70, totaling $150. I felt bad for him and for Sylvia stuck with someone like him, she says, insisting she had no romantic motives. He wasn't my type. Courtney's generosity extended beyond calls. After learning about Sylvia, she befriended her and drove her to the jail twice to post Fred's bail, covering gas and missing work shifts. He promised to pay me back when he got out, she says, producing a receipt for the calls but not the trips, which she estimates cost $50 in gas and $100 in lost wages. Judge Judy cuts in, her voice blunt. Did you have a contract for those drives, Ms. Austin? Courtney admits she didn't, acting out of the kindness of my heart. Judge Judy's tone is sharp. Kindness doesn't win lawsuits. On the calls, she grills Fred. Did you tell her you'd pay for those calls? Fred denies it, saying, we were friends, I thought she'd help. Judge Judy snaps, I don't believe you. You told her you'd pay. She calls Fred taker, accusing him of exploiting Courtney's empathy, her voice dripping with disdain. You don't use people's feelings, Mr. Atwater. Courtney's perspective is layered. Her initial pity reflects genuine compassion, but her continued acceptance of calls after Fred's lie suggests naivety or a hope for repayment, perhaps tied to lingering feelings despite her denials. Psychologically, she seems driven by a need to help, clouded by Fred's manipulation. Legally, the collect calls hinge on an implied contract, Fred's promise to repay. Per Georgia's Uniform Commercial Code OCGA 11.2, twin winning is enforceable if proven. The gas and wage claims are weaker, lacking documentation or a clear agreement. The broader context is stark. Prison collect call systems, charging exorbitant rates, burden low-income individuals, with the Federal Communications Commission reporting over 10,000 complaints annually about high fees, often exploiting emotional ties, as seen here. The setting, a small Georgia town, far from Fred's Los Angeles roots, adds tension. Courtney, a local, felt sympathy for Fred's isolation, while Sylvia's role as the battered fiancée complicates the dynamics, suggesting a cycle of dysfunction. The case reflects a broader societal issue. Incarceration strains relationships, with the Bureau of Justice statistics noting over 2 million Americans incarcerated annually, many relying on friends or family for support, often at a steep cost. Fred takes the stand, his demeanor evasive, his eyes darting as he avoids direct answers. He insists he and Courtney were never more than friends, claiming, I left a note on her car because we worked in the same complex, nothing romantic. He admits lying about Sylvia being his sister, shrugging. I didn't think she'd care. On the collect calls, he says, I never promised to pay. She accepted them willingly. She could have hung up. Judge Judy cuts him off, her voice like a whip. I don't believe that, Mr. Atwater. You knew those calls cost $2.70 each. You told her you'd pay. Fred doubles down, claiming, we didn't have a home phone, just mobiles, so I called her. Judge Judy's exasperation peaks. You're a taker, Mr. Atwater. You don't exploit people's feelings. Sylvia, testifying, paints Courtney as a nuisance-turned harasser. After Fred promised to pay her back, she wouldn't stop. Sylvia says, her voice tight. She sent emails, left notes at our door, even brought police to our complex, claiming we owed her. They seek $500 for emotional distress. Courtney counters, her voice rising. I was just trying to get my money back. He wasn't my type. I didn't want trouble. Judge Judy presses Sylvia. Why accept her help if you didn't want her involved? Sylvia stammers, we needed the bail money, and she offered. Judge Judy's tone turns scathing. When women do foolish things, I get frustrated. You stayed with a man who hit you, and you, Miss Austin, kept helping after he lied. She calls Fred out for manipulating both women, adding, I pity you both for dealing with him. Fred's countersuit details Courtney's alleged harassment, 10 emails demanding payment, 3 notes left at their apartment, and 1 police visit to check on Fred, which Sylvia claims was intimidating. Courtney admits to the emails and notes but says, I just wanted my $150. The police visit, she clarifies, was to ensure Fred was safe post-release, not harassment. Judge Judy leans in, Ms. Austin, between $150 and $170. $5 isn't an answer in court. What's the exact amount? Courtney, flustered, sticks to $150, supported by her call log. Psychologically, Fred appears opportunistic, using lies to secure help while deflecting responsibility. Sylvia's complicity suggests loyalty clouded by desperation, perhaps tied to her engagement to a troubled man. Courtney's persistence, emails, notes, reads as frustration, not malice, driven by betrayal over Fred's broken promise. Legally, Georgia's harassment laws OCGA 1611-39.1 require intent to annoy or intimidate, but Courtney's actions align more with debt collection, weakening the countersuit. The collect calls, however, rest on Fred's implied promise, enforceable under Georgia law. The prison setting amplifies the stakes. Collect call rates, often $2 to $3 per call, exploit emotional connections, a practice criticized by advocacy groups like Prison Policy Initiative, which estimates inmates and families spend over $1 billion annually on such calls. The backstory of Fred's incarceration, drug abuse and domestic violence, adds a layer of tragedy. Courtney's willingness to help, even after the lie, suggests a mix of empathy and naivety, while Sylvia's decision to stay with Fred hints at a cycle of dependency. This case is a microcosm of how incarceration strains relationships, turning small favors into legal battles. Judge Judy delivers her ruling with her signature blend of clarity and moral outrage. Mr. Atwater, you must pay Ms. Austin $150 for the collect calls. I believe you promised to repay her, and you took advantage of her kindness. The gas and wage claims are dismissed. Courtney's lack of documentation or a clear contract dooms them. Kinness isn't a contract, Judge Judy says, her tone firm. The harassment countersuit is rejected. Ms. Austin was trying to collect a debt, not harass you. You, Mr. Atwater, exploited her empathy. The ruling aligns with Georgia's contract laws, the OCGA. 11-2-21, Fred's promise creates an enforceable obligation, supported by Courtney's call log. Harassment requires intent to annoy OCGA 1611-39.1, which Sylvia and Fred can't prove. Courtney's emails and notes were debt-related, not malicious. Judge Judy's moral stance is a highlight. Don't take advantage of others' emotions, Mr. Atwater. You're a taker, and I'm disappointed in both these women for dealing with you. The ruling reflects broader societal issues. Prison collect call systems exploit vulnerable connections, with the Federal Communications Commission capping rates in 2015 to curb abuse, though high fees persist. Courtney's case underscores how incarceration burdens those outside, with the Bureau of Justice Statistics noting over 2 million Americans incarcerated annually, many relying on friends or family for costly support. Post-ruling, Courtney is relieved, her voice steady. I'm satisfied with the phone bill payment. I have no hard feelings. Her final jab, he'll be back in jail soon, and no one else will take his calls, lands with biting clarity. Fred defensive claims she acted out of spite. Sylvia remains silent, her expression resigned, perhaps grappling with her choice to stay with Fred. This case highlights the exploitation of trust, a common theme in small claims courts, where personal favors morph into legal battles, with over 100,000 such cases filed annually across the United States. Bledsoe versus High Austin versus Atwater and Mayfield are vivid portraits of trust betrayed. Jared's business suffered from a severed phone line. Courtney's kindness was exploited by a deceitful friend, and both faced financial and emotional tolls. Judge Judy's rulings, $340, $2.48 for Michelle's bill, the printer returned, and $150 for Courtney's calls. Deliver justice with a stern lesson. Promises carry weight, and exploitation has consequences. United States law balances rights with accountability, and these cases show how personal disputes escalate into legal battles when trust erodes. As you drift off, reflect on the fragility of relationships and the strength to demand fairness. Sleep well, dreaming of justice and wiser tomorrows. Welcome back to the podcast where real-life courtroom dramas unfold, designed to captivate your imagination as you drift towards sleep. Tonight, we dive into two explosive cases from Judge Judy's Courtroom: Hoffman versus Coons and McLean versus Clark. These aren't just legal disputes. They're raw, emotional sagas of broken trust, addiction, and the fight for accountability. We'll dissect every twist, tying them to United States law, with Judge Judy's unrelenting style guiding us through the chaos. Picture yourself in the courtroom, tension crackling, yet safe in bed with soft jazz as your guide. Settle in, close your eyes, and let's enter the fray. The courtroom pulses with tension as case number 1, Hoffman versus Coons, begins. Donna Hoffman, a poised interior designer in her late 40s, steps forward, her tailored blazer crisp, but her eyes blazing with maternal fury and betrayal. Across from her stands Daniel Coons, a lanky 19-year-old warehouse worker, his posture slouched, eyes darting nervously, betraying a mix of guilt and defiance. Judge Judy, perched like an eagle, her gaze sharp as a blade, dives in with her signature intensity. Donna sues Daniel, her daughter Christina's boyfriend, for $1,320 stolen from her bank account, $650 taken from Christina's account, and $2,941 in car damages from an accident he caused while driving with a suspended license. This is a saga of addiction, deception, and a mother's desperate fight to protect her daughter from a destructive relationship. Donna takes the stand, her voice steady but laced with pain, painting a vivid picture of trust shattered. She welcomed Daniel into her suburban California home, treating him like family as he dated her 20-year-old daughter Christina, an aesthetics technician. I gave him a roof, food, trust. She says, her tone heavy with regret, but that trust crumbled when her bank flagged suspicious activity, forged checks totaling $1,320 drawn from her account. They called about signatures that didn't match. She says, producing bank statements showing unauthorized withdrawals. She later discovered Daniel had withdrawn $650 from Christina's account, claiming she knew, a claim Christina vehemently denies. The final blow came when Donna's insurance company contacted her about an accident involving her set-in, driven by Daniel in a parking lot. He didn't even tell me, she says, her voice rising with indignation. I found out from the other driver's insurance, demanding payment for damage he caused. The accident details are contentious. Donna presents repair estimates showing damage under the car's bumper, dents and scratches costing $2,941. She explains Daniel's license was suspended for 2 speeding tickets and a red light violation, yet Christina permitted him to drive to buy insulin. Judge Judy leans in, her tone cutting. You let this boy live in your house, and he steals from you and wrecks your car? Donna nods, her jaw tight, admitting she didn't know about the suspended license until after the accident. Daniel interrupts, claiming he was just getting stuff for dinner, not insulin, earning a sharp rebuke. Don't speak out of turn, Mr. Coons. You're already in deep water. Judge Judy presses. Did you know his license was suspended? Donna shakes her head. Christina never told me. I trusted her judgment. Let's unpack Donna's perspective. As a mother and professional, her hospitality toward Daniel was an extension of her love for Christina, but his actions, forgery, theft, and reckless driving, shattered that bond. Her anger is palpable, yet her restraint suggests a hope that Christina will learn from this betrayal. Psychologically, Donna seems torn between protecting her daughter and seeking justice, her pain deepened by Christina's loyalty to Daniel. Legally, this case spans multiple issues. Check forgery is a crime under California Penal Code Section 470, and civilly, Donna can recover stolen funds as restitution under California Civil Code Section 33D36. The car accident implicates California Vehicle Code Section 4.6 under 4, which holds owners liable for damages by drivers they knowingly allow to drive without a valid license, though Donna's ignorance of Daniel's status strengthens her claim against him. Nationally, financial crimes tied to addiction are rampant, with the FBI reporting over 1 million fraud cases annually, many linked to drug dependency like Daniel's OxyContin and Habit. The context is critical, a middle-class California suburb where a mother's generosity was exploited by a troubled teen. Daniel's youth and addiction frame his actions, but his lack of remorse fuels Donna's resolve. The case mirrors countless family disputes where trust, addiction, and responsibility collide, amplified by emotional ties and the devastating ripple effects of substance abuse. Daniel takes the stand, his voice shaky but tinged with defiance, admitting to forging Donna's checks. I was messed up on OxyContin, he says, his eyes avoiding hers. I got in with bad people, doing stupid things, needing cash for drugs. He claims he took only $1,320 from Donna and $650 from Christina, insisting he repaid Donna through labor, painting her office and doing yard work. I worked it off, he says, but Donna shakes her head, her voice firm. There was no agreement. He never offered. Judge Judy's eyes narrow. You expect me to believe you worked off $1,320 without a contract? Daniel fumbles, producing no evidence, his credibility waning. On Christina's account, Daniel claims she knew about the withdrawals, saying she got texts about the transactions. Christina, called as a witness, steps forward, her voice trembling with hurt and anger. At 20, she balances work at Express and aesthetics training, living with her parents. I saw bank alerts, but I didn't know he was taking money until checks bounced, she says, tears welling. Judge Judy pounces. You lied, Mr. Coons, saying she was complicit. You deceived her. Daniel backtracks, admitting he didn't tell Christina, his eyes dropping to the floor. Judge Judy's voice is icy. You tried to trick me, thinking I'd buy that she was in on it. She's not your accomplice. The car accident sparks heated debate. Daniel insists it was minor, claiming a woman backed into him in a parking lot near a grocery store. I gave her my number, told her to call if there was an issue. He says, shrugging. It wasn't a big deal. But Donna's evidence, insurance claims, photos, and a police report shows Daniel backed into the woman's car, causing damage under the bumper. The other driver filed a claim, citing Daniel's failure to report the incident. Judge Judy's tone is scathing. You drove with a suspended license, Mr. Coons. That's illegal. Not a small thing. And you lied about buying insulin? Daniel mumbles. It was just dinner stuff. Earning a Sharp. You're a fool, Miss Sharp. Coons. He claims he's a great driver, despite 2 speeding tickets and a red light violation, prompting Judge Judy to snap. A great driver with a suspended license. Don't waste my time. Christina's testimony is heart-wrenching. Despite Daniel's betrayal, she admits, I love him. Her voice breaking. He's an idiot, but I see good in him. Judge Judy's tone softens but remains firm. If you hitch your wagon to this fool, you'll have a miserable life. Listen to your mother. She's been through marriage and divorce. Christina nods, tears streaming, but her loyalty to Daniel lingers, a mix of hope and denial. Judge Judy's frustration peaks. I don't care how much he took from you, Miss Fool. That's your problem if you stay with him. She turns to Donna, adding, your daughter's making bad choices, but you can't sue for that. Daniel's claims of redemption add complexity. He says he's working toward a Class A license for his uncle's trucking company and completed a 10-day rehab program. Judge Judy scoffs, calling it a crash course, and citing expert recommendations for 18 months of inpatient treatment. You think 10 days fixes addiction, theft, and reckless driving? She asks, her voice dripping with skepticism. Daniel's insistence on wanting to marry, have kids, live clean, feels hollow against his actions. Donna, in a post-trial statement, is grim. Once they start like this, they don't change. Christina, torn, admits Daniel's flaws but clings to hope, saying he's trying. Psychologically, Daniel's admissions reveal shame masked by bravado, his youth and addiction driving reckless choices. Christina's loyalty suggests naivety or fear of loss, while Donna's resolve reflects a mother's protective instinct, tempered by frustration with her daughter's choices. Legally, Daniel's forgery violates California Penal Code Section 470, and his driving with a suspended license breaches Vehicle Code Section 1500, making him liable for damages. Christina's permission to drive doesn't absolve Daniel, as Donna, the car's owner, didn't consent, strengthening her claim under Vehicle Code Section 17150. The case reflects broader issues: addiction, driven theft costs Americans billions annually, per the National Institute on Drug Abuse, often fracturing family ties. Judge Judy delivers her ruling with razor-sharp clarity, her voice a blend of authority and exasperation. Mr. Coons, you're a fool who stole from a woman who took you in and wrecked her car illegally. You owe Mrs. Hoffman $2,940, $1 for the car damage and stolen funds. The award covers $1,320 from Donna's account, $650 from Christina's, and $2,940, $1 for repairs, adjusted for overlap in claims. Daniel's claim of repaying through labor is dismissed. Donna denies any agreement, and he provides no proof. His driving with a suspended license seals his liability, as California law holds unlicensed drivers accountable for damages Vehicle Code Section 17(1) figure. The ruling aligns with legal principles. Forgery is a tort under California's conversion laws, Civil Code Section 3336, allowing recovery of stolen funds. The car accident falls under negligence per se, as Daniel's illegal driving directly caused the damage, supported by the police report and insurance claim. Christina's permission doesn't absolve Daniel, as Donna's lack of consent trumps it. Judge Judy's moral stance shines. You don't steal from people who help you, Mr. Coons. And you, Christina, need to wake up. She adds a biting jab. I went to law school for this, reflecting her frustration with the case's messiness. Nationally, addiction-related disputes clog small claims courts, with California handling over 100,000 such cases yearly. The National Institute on Drug Abuse notes that opioid addiction, like Daniel's, drives over 70% of financial crimes in young adults, costing families billions. Donna's case underscores the emotional toll her trust in Daniel, extended through Christina, left her financially and emotionally drained. Post-ruling, Donna is resolute but wary. I hope he changes, but I doubt it. Daniel's plea. I want to live clean, marry, have kids, rings hollow while Christina's tearful I love him underscores her conflict torn between love and reality. Case number 2, McLean versus Clark, shifts to a tense family dispute in a California courtroom. Michael McLean, a burly butcher in his mid-30s, steps forward, his work-worn hands steady but his voice thick with frustration. Across from him is Lel Clark, a nurse in her late 20s, her posture defensive, eyes guarded, hinting at defiance or shame. Michael sues Lel for $694 in child support payments deducted from his wages while their 11-year old son lived with him, at Lel's request, due to her housing crisis. Lel counters that the arrangement was temporary and she provided for the child, refusing to pay. This is a story of parental duty, financial strain, and the clash of obligations in a fractured family. Michael takes the stand, his tone resolute, painting a clear picture of the situation. On January 28, 2004, Lel called. Desperate, her landlord raised her rent by $300, making her apartment unaffordable. She asked me to take our son, Michael says, noting he's cared for the boy ever since, covering rent, food, utilities, and school costs, yet child support payments of $272 monthly continued being deducted from his paycheck for 2 months, plus 3 weeks, totaling $694. I'm raising him, and she's still getting my money, he says, producing pay stubs and a school letter confirming the boy's address as his home. Michael, a father of 3, pays support for his other 2 children, none of whom live with him, adding to his financial burden as a butcher and meat department manager. Judge Judy dives in, her voice sharp. You're saying she collected support while you had the child. Michael nods. Exactly. She never offered to stop it. Lel counters, her voice defensive. It was temporary. I still bought him clothes, paid for doctor visits, school activities, sneakers. Judge Judy's tone is stern. That's what parents do, Miss Clark. That doesn't cover rent, utilities, food, his daily costs. Michael adds that Lel never discussed reversing the support order or paying him support, despite the boy living with him full-time. Judge Judy presses Lel. Why didn't you file to stop the payments? Lel stammers. I thought it was temporary, prompting a scathing. Only one attitude matters here, Miss Clark. Mine. Michael's perspective is grounded in fairness as a working father. He's stretched thin, juggling support for 3 children while taking on full-time care for his son. His frustration feels authentic, amplified by Lel's dismissal of his role. Psychologically, he seems driven by duty but angered by what he perceives as exploitation. Legally, this case hinges on child support laws under California Family Code Section 3900, which mandates both parents support their child. When custody shifts, support obligations can be modified, Section 4061, and Michael's claim for reimbursement is valid if he proves the child lived with him. Nationally, child support disputes are common, with the U.S. Census Bureau reporting over 13 million custodial parents, many facing conflicts over payments during informal custody changes. The context: a working-class California community, highlights economic pressures. Lowell's rent hike reflects a broader housing crisis, with California rents rising over 20% from 2000 to 2005, per the Department of Housing and Community Development. Michael's role as a provider clashes with Lowell's claim of contribution, setting the stage for a heated dispute over parental responsibility and financial fairness. Lowell takes the stand, her voice defensive, her posture tense as she defends her actions. It was temporary, she insists, explaining her housing crisis forced her to ask Michael to take their son. I was struggling with a $300 rent increase. I still provided for my son. Clothes, doctor visits, school fees, new sneakers. Judge Judy cuts in, her tone blunt. Buying clothes is your job as a mother, not a substitute for his expenses like rent, utilities, food. Lowell reveals she doesn't pay support for her other child, a daughter living with that child's father, citing a mutual understanding. Judge Judy's eyes narrow. You don't get to pick and choose, Ms. Clark. Both parents support their kids, period. Michael disputes Lowell's claim of a temporary arrangement, his voice firm. She never set a timeline. And he's still with me. I'm covering everything. He presents a school letter confirming the boy's address and a utility bill in his name, showing his household expenses. Judge Judy grills Lowell. Why didn't you file to stop the support payments when he took the child? Lowell mumbles. I didn't think I had to. Earning a sharp, you thought wrong. When the child moved, support should have stopped. Judge Judy notes Lowell's failure to pay support for her other child, calling it irresponsible and questioning her priorities. Lowell's demeanor shifts from defensive to flustered, her arguments unraveling under scrutiny. The courtroom tension peaks when Lowell claims she begged Michael to take their son, implying he only agreed to avoid support payments. Michael fires back, I care for all my boys, not just to dodge payments. He details his efforts enrolling the boy in school, buying school supplies, and covering medical costs. Judge Judy nods approvingly at Michael's evidence, but scolds Lowell. You don't get to keep his money while he's raising your son. Lowell's claim of providing extras, like sneakers, falls flat, as Judge Judy reiterates. That's what parents do. It doesn't offset his costs. Psychologically, Lowell seems overwhelmed. Her housing woes justifying her actions in her mind, but her refusal to adjust support suggests denial or entitlement. Michael's insistence on fairness reflects a working-class ethos, his frustration palpable as he balances multiple responsibilities. Legally, California law requires support adjustments when custody changes, Family Code Section 4-62, and Lowell's failure to act makes her liable for reimbursement. The case mirrors broader issues. The U.S. Office of Child Support Enforcement reports over $30 billion in support payments annually, with disputes often arising from informal custody shifts, especially in economically strained households. The backstory adds depth. Lowell's nursing career offers stability, yet her housing crisis highlights California's affordability challenges. Michael's role as a butcher supporting 3 children underscores his financial strain, making Lowell's inaction feel like a betrayal. This case is a microcosm of how economic pressures and parental duties collide, turning temporary solutions into legal battles. Judge Judy delivers her ruling with her signature blend of clarity and moral authority. Mr. McLean, you're entitled to $694 for 2 months and 3 weeks of child support paid while your son lived with you. The award covers $272 monthly for 2 months, plus $150 for 3 weeks as payments stopped in April. Lowell's contributions, clothes, medical costs, school fees, don't offset Michael's expenses, as parental duties don't negate support obligations. Judge Judy scolds Lowell. When the child moved to his father, support should have stopped. You should be paying him support now. Her critique of Lowell's Payment for her other child underscores her irresponsibility. You're a nurse, Miss Clark. You know better. The ruling aligns with California Family Code Section 4062, which allows reimbursement when custody shifts. Michael's evidence, pay stubs, school records, utility bills, proves his claim, while Lel's lack of action weakens her defense. Judge Judy's moral stance is clear. Both parents support their kids, no exceptions. You don't get to keep his money while he's doing your job. The ruling reflects broader societal issues. Housing instability drives custody disputes, with California's high rents exacerbating tensions. The U.S. Census Bureau notes over 20% of custodial parents face payment disputes, often tied to economic pressures like Lel's rent hike. Post-ruling, Michael is measured but firm. $270 a month isn't enough to raise a kid for 2 weeks. I'm worried she'll take him back to avoid paying. Lel retorts, her voice sharp. I begged him to take him. He's just avoiding support. Michael counters, care for all my boys, not to dodge payments. Judge Judy's parting shot is biting. Ms. Clark, get your act together. Mr. McLean, keep doing right by your son. The case highlights the strain of co-parenting across economic divides, with small claims courts resolving thousands of similar disputes annually. Hoffman versus Coons and McLean versus Clark are vivid portraits of trust betrayed and duty tested. Daniel's addiction fueled theft and reckless driving cost Donna $2,941, while Christina's loyalty risks her future. Michael's fight for $694 in child support reflects a father's burden, met by Lel's denial. Judge Judy's rulings deliver justice with a stern lesson. Actions have consequences and responsibility is non-negotiable. United States law protects victims but demands accountability, and these cases show how personal failures, addiction, irresponsibility ripple outward, fracturing families. As you drift off, reflect on the cost of trust and the strength to demand fairness. Sleep well, dreaming of justice and wiser tomorrows. Welcome back to Podcast, where real-life courtroom dramas unfold, designed to captivate your imagination as you drift towards sleep. Tonight, we dive into 2 explosive cases from Judge Judy's courtroom, Hoffman versus Coons and McLean versus Clark. These aren't just legal disputes, they're raw, emotional sagas of broken trust, addiction, and the fight for accountability. We'll dissect every twist, tying them to United States law, with Judge Judy's unrelenting style guiding us through the chaos. The courtroom pulses with tension as case number 1, Hoffman versus Coons, begins. Donna Hoffman, a poised interior designer in her late 40s, steps forward, her tailored blazer crisp, but her eyes blazing with maternal fury and betrayal. Across from her stands Daniel Coons, a lanky 19-year-old warehouse worker, his posture slouched, eyes darting nervously, betraying a mix of guilt and defiance. Judge Judy, perched like an eagle, her gaze sharp as a blade, dives in with her signature intensity. Donna sues Daniel, her daughter Christina's boyfriend, for $1,320 stolen from her bank account, $650 taken from Christina's account, and $2,941 in car damages from an accident he caused while driving with a suspended license. This is a saga of addiction, deception, and a mother's desperate fight to protect her daughter from a destructive relationship. Donna takes the stand, her voice steady but laced with pain, painting a vivid picture of trust shattered. She welcomed Daniel into her suburban California home, treating him like family as he dated her 20-year-old daughter, Christina, an aesthetics technician. I gave him a roof food trust, she says, her tone heavy with regret. But that trust crumbled when her bank flagged suspicious activity. Forged checks totaling $1,320 drawn from her account. They called about signatures that didn't match, she says, producing bank statements showing unauthorized withdrawals. She later discovered Daniel had withdrawn $650 from Christina's account, claiming she knew, a claim Christina vehemently denies. The final blow came when Donna's insurance company contacted her about an accident involving her sedan, driven by Daniel in a parking lot. He didn't even tell me, she says, her voice rising with indignation. I found out from the other driver's insurance, demanding payment for damage he caused. The accident details are contentious. Donna presents repair estimates showing damage under the car's bumper, dents and scratches costing $2,941. She explains Daniel's license was suspended for 2 speeding tickets and a red light violation, yet Christina permitted him to drive to buy insulin. Judge Judy leans in, her tone cutting. You let this boy live in your house, and he steals from you and wrecks your car. Donna nods, her jaw tight, admitting she didn't know about the suspended license until after the accident. Daniel interrupts, claiming he was just getting stuff for dinner, not insulin, earning a sharp rebuke. Don't speak out of turn, Mr. Coons. You're already in deep water, Judge Judy presses. Did you know his license was suspended? Donna shakes her head. Christina never told me. I trusted her judgment. Let's unpack Donna's perspective. As a mother and professional, her hospitality toward Daniel was an extension of her love for Christina, but his actions, forgery, theft, and reckless driving, shattered that bond. Her anger is palpable, yet her restraint suggests a hope that Christina will learn from this betrayal. Psychologically, Donna seems torn between protecting her daughter and seeking justice, her pain deepened by Christina's loyalty to Daniel. Legally, this case spans multiple issues. Check forgery is a crime under California Penal Code Section 470, and civilly, Donna can recover stolen funds as restitution under California Civil Code Section 33-36. The car accident implicates California Vehicle Code Section 14604, which holds owners liable for damages by drivers they knowingly allow to drive without a valid license, though Donna's ignorance of Daniel's status strengthens her claim against him. Nationally, financial crimes tied to addiction are rampant, with the FBI reporting over 1 million fraud cases annually, many linked to drug dependency like Daniel's OxyContin habit. The context is critical: a middle-class California suburb, where a mother's generosity was exploited by a troubled teen. Daniel's youth and addiction frame his actions, but his lack of remorse fuels Donna's resolve. The case mirrors countless family disputes where trust, addiction, and responsibility collide, amplified by emotional ties and the devastating ripple effects of substance abuse. Daniel takes the stand, his voice shaky but tinged with defiance, admitting to forging Donna's checks. I was messed up on OxyContin, he says, his eyes avoiding hers. I got in with bad people, doing stupid things, needing cash for drugs. He claims he took only $1,320 from Donna and $650 from Christina, insisting he repaid Donna through labor, painting her office and doing yard work. I worked it off, he says, but Donna shakes her head, her voice firms. There was no agreement. He never offered. Judge Judy's eyes narrow. You expect me to believe you worked off $1,320 without a contract? Daniel fumbles, producing no evidence, his credibility waning. On Christina's account, Daniel claims she knew about the withdrawals, saying she got texts about the transactions. Christina, called as a witness, steps forward, her voice trembling with hurt and anger. At 20, she balances work at Express and aesthetics training, living with her parents. I saw bank alerts, but I didn't know he was taking money until checks bounced, she says, tears welling. Judge Judy pounces. You lied, Mr. Coons, saying she was complicit. You deceived her? Daniel backtracks, admitting he didn't tell Christina, his eyes dropping to the floor. Judge Judy's voice is icy. You tried to trick me, thinking I'd buy that she was in on it. She's not your accomplice. The car accident sparks heated debate. Daniel insists it was minor, claiming a woman backed into him in a parking lot near a grocery store. I gave her my number, told her to call if there was an issue, he says, shrugging. It wasn't a big deal, but Donna's evidence, insurance claims, photos, and a police report shows Daniel backed into the woman's car, causing damage under the bumper. The other driver filed a claim, citing Daniel's failure to report the incident. Judge Judy's tone is scathing. You drove with a suspended license, Mr. Coons. That's illegal, not a small thing. And you lied about buying insulin? Daniel mumbles. It was just dinner stuff. Earning a sharp. You're a fool, Mr. Coons. He claims he's a great driver, despite 2 speeding tickets and a red light violation, prompting Judge Judy to snap. A great driver with a suspended license. Don't waste my time. Christina's testimony is heart-wrenching. Despite Daniel's betrayal, she admits, I love him, her voice breaking. As an idiot, but I see good in him. Judge Judy's tone softens but remains firm. If you hitch your wagon to this fool, you'll have a miserable life. Listen to your mother. She's been through marriage and divorce. Christina nods, tears streaming, but her loyalty to Daniel lingers, a mix of hope and denial. Judge Judy's frustration peaks. I don't care how much he took from you, Miss Fool. That's your problem if you stay with him. She turns to Donna, adding, your daughter's making bad choices, but you can't sue for that. Daniel's claims of redemption add complexity. He says he's working toward a Class A license for his uncle's trucking company and completed a 10-day rehab program. Judge Judy scoffs, calling it a crash course and citing expert recommendations for 18 months of inpatient treatment. You think 10 days fixes addiction, theft, and reckless driving? She asks, her voice dripping with skepticism. Daniel's insistence on wanting to marry, have kids, live clean, feels hollow against his actions. Donna, in a post-trial statement, is grim. Once they start like this, they don't change. Christina, torn, admits Daniel's flaws but clings to hope, saying, he's trying. Psychologically, Daniel's admissions reveal shame masked by bravado, his youth and addiction driving reckless choices. Christina's loyalty suggests naivety or fear of loss, while Donna's resolve reflects a mother's protective instinct, tempered by frustration with her daughter's choices. Legally, Daniel's forgery violates California Penal Code Section 470, and his driving with a suspended license breaches Vehicle Code Section 2500, making him liable for damages. Christina's permission to drive doesn't absolve Daniel as Donna. The car's owner didn't consent, strengthening her claim under Vehicle Code Section 17150. The case reflects broader issues: addiction. Driven theft costs Americans billions annually. For the National Institute on Drug Abuse, often fracturing family ties, Judge Judy delivers her ruling with razor-sharp clarity, her voice a blend of authority and exasperation. Mr. Coons, you're a fool who stole from a woman who took you in and wrecked her car illegally. You owe Mrs. Hoffman $2,940, $1 for the car damage and stolen funds. The award covers $1,320 from Donna's account, $650 from Christina's, and $2,940, $1 for repairs, adjusted for overlap in claims. Daniel's claim of repaying through labor is dismissed. Donna denies any agreement, and he provides no proof. His driving with a suspended license seals his liability, as California law holds unlicensed drivers accountable for damages. Vehicle Code Section 17150. The ruling aligns with legal principles. Forgery is a tort under California's conversion laws, as Civil Code Section 3336, allowing recovery of stolen funds. The car accident falls under negligence per se, as Daniel's illegal driving directly caused the damage, supported by the police report and insurance claim. Christina's permission doesn't absolve Daniel, as Donna's lack of consent trumps it. Judge Judy's moral stance shines. You don't steal from people who help you, Mr. Coons. And you, Christina, need to wake up. She adds a biting jab. I went to law school for this, reflecting her frustration with the case's messiness. Nationally, addiction-related disputes clog small claims courts, with California handling over 100,000 such cases yearly. The National Institute on Drug Abuse notes that opioid addiction, like Daniel's, drives over 70% of financial crimes in young adults, costing families billions. Donna's case underscores the emotional toll her trust in Daniel, extended through Christina, left her financially and emotionally drained. Post-ruling, Donna is resolute but wary. I hope he changes, but I doubt it. Daniel's plea, I want to live clean, marry, have kids, rings hollow while Christina's tearful, I love him, underscores her conflict, torn between love and reality. Case number 2, McLean versus Clark, shifts to a tense family dispute in a California courtroom. Michael McLean, a burly butcher in his mid-30s, steps forward, his work-worn hands steady but his voice thick with frustration. Across from him is Lel Clark, a nurse in her late 20s, her posture defensive, eyes guarded, hinting at defiance or shame. Michael sues Lel for $694 in child support payments deducted from his wages while their 11-year-old son lived with him, at Lel's request. Due to her housing crisis, Lel counters that the arrangement was temporary and she provided for the child, refusing to pay. This is a story of parental duty, financial strain, and the clash of obligations in a fractured family. Michael takes the stand, his tone resolute, painting a clear picture of the situation. On January 28, 2004, Lel called. Desperate, her landlord raised her rent by $300, making her apartment unaffordable. She asked me to take our son, Michael says, noting he's cared for the boy ever since, covering rent, food, utilities, and school costs. Yet, child support payments of $272 monthly continued being deducted from his paycheck for 2 months, plus 3 weeks, totaling $694. I'm raising him, and she's still getting my money, he says, producing pay stubs showing the deductions. Michael, a father of 3, pays support for his other 2 children, none of whom live with him, adding to his financial burden as a butcher and meat department manager. Judge Judy dives in, her voice sharp. You're saying she collected support while you had the child? Michael nods, exactly. She never offered to stop it. Lel counters, her voice defensive. It was temporary. I said, still bought him clothes, paid for doctor visits, school activities, sneakers. Judge Judy's tone is stern. That's what parents do, Miss Clark. That doesn't cover rent, utilities, food, his daily costs. Michael adds that Lel never discussed reversing the support order or paying him support, despite the boy living with him full-time. Judge Judy presses Lel. Why didn't you file to stop the payments? Lel stammers. I thought it was temporary, prompting a scathing. Only one attitude matters here, Miss Clark. Mine. Michael's perspective is grounded in fairness. As a working father, he's stretched thin, juggling support for 3 children while taking on full-time care for his son. His frustration feels authentic, amplified by Lel's dismissal of his role. Psychologically, he seems driven by duty but angered by what he perceives as exploitation. Legally, this case hinges on child support laws under California Family Code Section 3900, which mandates both parents support their child. When custody shifts, support obligations can be modified, Section 46(1), and Michael's claim for reimbursement is valid if he proves the child lived with him. Nationally, child support disputes are common, with the U.S. Census Bureau reporting over 13 million custodial parents, many facing conflicts over payments during informal custody changes. The context, a working-class California community, highlights economic pressures. Lel's rent hike reflects a broader housing crisis, with California rents rising over 20% from 2000 to 2005 per the Department of Housing and Community Development. Michael's role as a provider clashes with Lel's claim of contribution, setting the stage for a heated dispute over parental responsibility and financial fairness. Lel takes the stand, her voice defensive, her posture tense as she defends her actions. It was temporary, she insists, explaining her housing crisis forced her to ask Michael to take their son. I was struggling with a $300 rent increase. I still provided for my son, clothes, doctor visits, school fees, new sneakers. Judge Judy cuts in, her tone blunt. Buying clothes is your job as a mother, not a substitute for his expenses like rent, utilities, food. Lel reveals she doesn't pay support for her other child, a daughter living with that child's father, citing a mutual understanding. Judge Judy's eyes narrow. You don't get to pick and choose, Miss Clark. Both parents support their kids. Period. Michael disputes Lel's claim of a temporary arrangement, his voice firm. She never set a timeline, and he's still with me. I'm covering everything. He presents a school letter confirming the boy's address and a utility bill in his name showing his household expenses. Judge Judy grills Lel. Why didn't you file to stop the support payments when he took the child? Lel mumbles. I didn't think I had to. Earning a sharp, you thought wrong. When the child moved, support should have stopped. Judge Judy notes Lel's failure to pay support for her other child, calling it irresponsible and questioning her priorities. Lel's demeanor shifts from defensive to flustered, her arguments unraveling under scrutiny. The courtroom tension peaks when Lel claims she begged Michael to take their son, implying he only agreed to avoid support payments. Michael fires back, "I care for all my boys, not just to dodge payments." He details his efforts enrolling the boy in school, buying school supplies, and covering medical costs. Judge Judy nods approvingly at Michael's evidence, but scolds Lel. "You don't get to keep his money while he's raising your son." Lel's claim of providing extras like sneakers falls flat as Judge Judy reiterates, "That's what parents do. It doesn't offset his costs." Psychologically, Lel seems overwhelmed. Her housing was justifying her actions in her mind, but her refusal to adjust support suggests denial or entitlement. Michael's insistence on fairness reflects a working-class ethos, his frustration palpable as he balances multiple responsibilities. Legally, California law requires support adjustments when custody changes Family Code Section 46(2), and Lel's failure to act makes her liable for reimbursement. The case mirrors broader issues. The U.S. Office of Child Support Enforcement reports over $30 billion in support payments annually, with disputes often arising from informal custody shifts, especially in economically strained households. The backstory adds depth. Lel's nursing career offers stability, yet her housing crisis highlights California's affordability challenges. Michael's role as a butcher, supporting 3 children, underscores his financial strain, making Lel's inaction feel like a betrayal. This case is a microcosm of how economic pressures and parental duties collide, turning temporary solutions into legal battles. Judge Judy delivers her ruling with her signature blend of clarity and moral authority. "Mr. McLean, you're entitled to $694 for 2 months and 3 weeks of child support paid while your son lived with you. The award covers $272 monthly for 2 months, plus $150 for 3 weeks, as payments stopped in April. Lel's contributions, clothes, medical costs, school fees, don't offset Michael's expenses, as parental duties don't negate support obligations." Judge Judy scolds Lel. "When the child moved to his father, support should have stopped. You should be paying him support now." Her critique of Lel's non-payment for her other child underscores her irresponsibility. "You're a nurse, Miss Clark. You know better." The ruling aligns with California Family Code Section 4-62, which allows reimbursement when custody shifts. Michael's evidence, pay stubs, school records, utility bills, proves his claim, while Lel's lack of action weakens her defense. Judge Judy's moral stance is clear. Both parents support their kids, no exceptions. You don't get to keep his money while he's doing your job. The ruling reflects broader societal issues. Housing instability drives custody disputes, with California's high rents exacerbating tensions. The U.S. Census Bureau notes over 20% of custodial parents face payment disputes, often tied to economic pressures like Lel's rent hike. Post-ruling, Michael is measured but firms. $272 a month isn't enough to raise a kid for 2 weeks. I'm worried she'll take him back to avoid paying. Lel retorts, her voice sharp, "I begged him to take him. He's just avoiding support." Michael counters, "I care for all my boys, not to dodge payments." Judge Judy's parting shot is biting. Clark, get your act together. Mr. McLean, keep doing right by your son." The case highlights the strain of parenting across economic divides, with small claims courts resolving thousands of similar disputes annually. Hoffman versus Coons and McLean versus Clark are vivid portraits of trust betrayed and duty tested. Daniel's addiction fueled theft and reckless driving cost Donna $2,941, while Christina's loyalty risks her future. Michael's fight for $694 in child support reflects a father's burden, met by Lel's denial. Judge Judy's rulings deliver justice with a stern lesson. Actions have consequences, and responsibility is non-negotiable. United States law protects victims but demands accountability, and these cases show how personal failures, addiction, irresponsibility ripple outward, fracturing families. As you drift off, reflect on the cost of trust and the strength to demand fairness. Sleep well, dreaming of justice and wiser tomorrows. Welcome back, podcast, where real-life courtroom dramas unfold. designed to captivate your imagination as you drift toward sleep. Tonight, we plunge into two electrifying cases from Judge Judy's courtroom, Hunting versus Rodriguez and Kerr versus Guthrie. These aren't mere legal squabbles, they're raw, emotional sagas of shattered trust, fiery tempers, and the relentless pursuit of accountability. We'll dissect every twist, tying them to United States law, with Judge Judy's unyielding, no-nonsense style guiding us through the chaos. The courtroom pulses with electric tension as case number 1, Hunting versus Rodriguez, case no. 91, kicks off. Amber Hunting, a 21-year-old college student with a poised demeanor and eyes blazing with resolve, steps forward, her casual jeans and sweater masking the storm of indignation beneath. Across from her stands Daniel Rodriguez, also 21, a lanky fellow student whose slouched posture and darting eyes betray a mix of defiance and unease. Judge Judy, perched like a vigilant hawk, her gaze sharp as a blade, dives in with her signature intensity. Amber is suing Daniel for $1,893 in damages to 2 cars, hers and her mother Doreen's 1997 Ford Escort, allegedly caused by Daniel's furious kicks after a poker game spiraled into chaos on August 27, 2004 at Amber's suburban California home. This isn't just about dents and scratches, it's a vivid saga of alcohol-fueled aggression, broken trust, and the fragile line between friendly competition and outright vandalism. Amber takes the stand, her voice steady yet laced with righteous anger, painting a vivid picture of a night that began with laughter but ended in destruction. She had invited 6 friends for a casual poker game, including Daniel, a friend of their mutual acquaintance Robert Silva, whom Amber barely knew. Daniel arrived possibly tipsy, she notes, his demeanor already hinting at volatility. The game rolled on smoothly for hours, chips clinking, banter flowing, until a pivotal hand sparked a dispute. Daniel believed he'd won, but questions arose about the cards. His mood shifted abruptly, defensive then aggressive. He started cursing, shoving people. Amber recounts, her tone heavy with disbelief. He tried to fight my boyfriend, and then he grabbed a bicycle and threw it across my hardwood floor, bruising my friend's arm. The room, once a haven of camaraderie, became a pressure cooker of hostility, with Daniel's rage escalating unchecked. Amber describes the group's frantic efforts to calm Daniel, a grueling 15-minute ordeal to coax him out of her home. Robert, his friend of 15 years, finally escorted him away, but not before the alleged vandalism. Amber claims that as Daniel stormed off, he unleashed his fury on the parked cars, kicking her vehicle and her mother's 1997 Ford Escort, leaving a circular dent near the driver's door and chipped paint scattered on the ground. She called the police immediately, and a detective confirmed the fresh damage, noting paint flakes and a dent consistent with a forceful kick. Amber presents photos, repair estimates totaling $1,893 and a police report. Her evidence stack a testament to her determination. Judge Judy leans forward, her tone cutting. So, this young man turns your friendly game into a brawl and then takes it out on your cars. Amber nods firmly, her jaw tight, emphasizing she didn't invite Daniel to wreak havoc. Let's unpack Amber's perspective. As a young student hosting a social gathering, her trust in her guests was shattered by Daniel's volatility, likely amplified by alcohol. Her swift call to the police reflects a blend of fear and resolve, a young woman refusing to let destruction slide. Psychologically, Amber's composure masks deep frustration. Her home, a place of safety, was violated by a near stranger's tantrum. Her testimony is methodical, her anger tempered by a desire for justice rather than revenge. Legally, this case hinges on vandalism under California Penal Code Section 594, which defines maliciously damaging another's property as a crime, punishable civilly via small claims court, where California's limit reaches $12,500. Amber seeks compensation for repairs, supported by negligence or intentional tort principles. Nationally, the FBI's Uniform Crime Reports note over 500,000 vandalism incidents annually, with alcohol involved in roughly 40%, costing victims billions and often straining social bonds, as seen here. The context, a suburban California gathering among college-aged peers, highlights how poker's competitive edge, mixed with youthful impulsivity and alcohol, can ignite chaos, per the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, which links such settings to spikes in aggressive incidents. Doreen Hunting, Amber's mother, looms in the background, her car an unintended casualty, adding a familial layer to the betrayal. Daniel's alleged actions, framed by his later admission of anger, underscore how minor disputes can escalate, rippling outward to affect others. Daniel takes the stand, his voice wavering between defiance and regret, admitting to the heated poker dispute but vehemently denying the vandalism. "I won that hand fair and square," he insists, eyes darting nervously. He claims Amber's boyfriend initially agreed he'd won, only for Amber to jump in, scrutinizing the cards and declaring her boyfriend the victor. She said, "No, you won. Look at your hand." Daniel recounts, frustration evident. The argument escalated, with Daniel feeling cornered as Amber and her boyfriend challenged him. He admits to name calling but insists it targeted the men over the pot, not Amber personally, as the women had already lost their chips and left the game. "It was about the money I was owed," he says, claiming he was provoked when Amber's boyfriend got in his face, nearly sparking a fist fight. Regarding the bicycle, Daniel downplays it. "It was in the way as I was being pulled out. I bumped it, didn't throw it." He flatly denies kicking any cars, questioning why Robert, his longtime friend, only saw one kick if two occurred. Judge Judy's cross-examination is a masterclass in dismantling inconsistencies, her voice sharp as a blade. "You had a motive to be angry that night, didn't you, Mr. Rodriguez?" She presses, pinning him with her gaze. Daniel's reluctant yes hangs heavy, a crack in his defense. Then the pivotal question, "If you were sitting in my chair, would you think you caused the damage?" His damning, "Yes, Mum," draws gas, undermining his denials. Amber's friend Tristan takes the stand, corroborating her account of Daniel's aggression, cursing, shoving, and the bicycle incident that left a friend's arm bruised. But the turning point is Robert Silva, Daniel's friend of 15 years, called as Amber's surprise witness. Robert, calm and measured, confirms seeing Daniel kick Amber's car as they left, though only one vehicle, not two. "I didn't say anything to him then." Robert admits, his neutrality lending credibility. Daniel's reaction is visceral shock, then defensiveness, fumbling to explain the bicycle and insisting he was repaid the pot money before leaving. Judge Judy pounces on inconsistencies, her tone scathing. "You're telling me you were calm, but your own friend saw you kick a car. Don't play games with me, young man." She grills Daniel on his alcohol consumption, his interruptions earning sharp rebukes. "Speak when spoken to, or you're digging your own grave." Robert clarifies they walked out together, not that he dragged Daniel, but admits Daniel was still arguing about the pot. Amber's boyfriend, though not testifying, is a shadow in the narrative, his alleged provocation dismissed by Judge Judy as irrelevant to the property damage. Psychologically, Daniel's bravado masks vulnerability, a young man perhaps overwhelmed by peer pressure and alcohol, his admissions revealing inner conflict. Amber's poise contrasts sharply, her teary-eyed retorts showing frustration at the betrayal of her hospitality. Robert's testimony, betraying his friend for truth, adds a layer of moral complexity. His 15-year bond with Daniel making his words weighty. Legally, vandalism requires proving intent and damage under California Penal Code Section 594. In small claims, for California courts, a preponderance of evidence. Here, photos, police report, and Robert's account suffices. The U.S. Department of Justice notes alcohol fuels 40% of vandalism cases, often escalating from disputes like this poker fiasco, costing communities billions annually. Amber's evidence stack, coupled with Daniel's own admissions, tilts the scales heavily against him, setting up a climactic ruling. Judge Judy delivers her verdict with unerring clarity, her voice a blend of exasperation and finality. "Mr. Rodriguez, you let your temper turn a friendly game into chaos, and you took it out on property that wasn't yours. You owe Ms. Hunting $1,890, $3 for the repairs. The award covers the dents on both vehicles." Dismissing Daniel's denials in light of his own admission of motive and Robert's eyewitness account, Judge Judy emphasizes the detective's confirmation of fresh damage. paint flakes, and a circular dent, rejecting any notion of coincidence. Her moral edge cuts deep. A night of cards shouldn't end in destruction. Learn to walk away before you kick yourself into court. This ruling aligns with legal principles. California Penal Code Section 590 defines vandalism as maliciously damaging property, with civil remedies in small claims court up to $12,500. Amber's evidence, photos, police report, repair estimates meets the preponderance standard per California court's guidelines. Nationally, NOLO's legal resources note negligence per se applies when laws like property protection are violated. Establishing liability, the FBI reports over 500,000 vandalism incidents yearly, with alcohol-related cases costing over $1 billion in damages, often straining social bonds as seen here. Post-ruling, Daniel shrugs it off as drunken nonsense, downplaying the dents as no big deal, revealing a lack of remorse. Amber expresses relief, her voice steady. I just wanted this handled right. Robert, reflecting on 15 years of friendship, laments it as just one bad night, his tone heavy with regret. The case underscores how fleeting tempers leave lasting scars, a lesson in accountability under the law. The courtroom shifts to a new drama as case number 2. Kerr versus Guthrie unfolds. Lisa Kerr, a 26-year-old account manager with a composed yet wary demeanor, faces her ex-boyfriend Gary Guthrie, whose evasive glances and fidgeting hands betray unease. Judge Judy, ever the arbiter of truth, dives in with her trademark sharpness. Lisa is suing Gary for $3,035, the cost of a high-tech spy phone she purchased on credit at his request, which he promised to repay but now claims was a gift. This saga weaves deception, malfunctioning tech, and post-breakup bitterness, spotlighting the murky line between loans and gifts and fleeting romances. Lisa takes the stand, her voice firm but tinged with betrayal, recounting their brief relationship during her separation from her husband. Gary, a security surveillance worker, coveted a sophisticated spy device from a Thai company, touted for covert monitoring. Lacking funds, he persuaded Lisa to charge it to her credit card, promising swift repayment. He said it was for his job and he'd pay me back right away. Lisa explains, her tone heavy with regret. The device, costing $3,035, arrived after their breakup, only to malfunction. Lisa paid to ship it back, expecting a replacement, but discovered in mid-December, months later, that the wrong item, Gary's brother Adam's personal phone, was sent. Gary ghosted her from December to March, never alerting her to the error. She produces receipts, shipping records, and emails, demanding repayment for what she insists was a loan, not a gift. Judge Judy probes. So he's sweet, talks you into buying this fancy gadget, then disappears when it goes wrong. Lisa nods, her frustration palpable, emphasizing the clear repayment agreement. Let's unpack Lisa's perspective. As a woman navigating a tumultuous separation, her trust in Gary was exploited, her testimony revealing vulnerability transformed into resolve. Psychologically, she appears empowered by confronting the issue, bolstered by her friend Lindsay's support. Her swift action, chasing down the return error, shows determination to right a financial wrong. Legally, this case hinges on contract law, distinguishing loans with repayment expectation from gifts no obligation, per U.S. common law principles outlined in fine law. In small claims, breach of promise to repay requires proving agreement and failure, which Lisa's evidence supports. Nationally, the IRS clarifies loans involve formal repayment intent, unlike gifts, and disputes over relational finances clog courts, with over 10 million small claims filings yearly per court statistics. The context, a short romance entangled with a shady overseas tech purchase, amplifies the risks. The FTC warns of billions lost annually to international tech scams, often compounded by relational disputes like this. Gary's inaction, especially post-breakup, suggests possible spite, tying into broader themes of retaliation after romantic fallout, a pattern seen in countless small claims cases. Gary takes the stand, his tone shifting from confident to hesitant, claiming the spy phone was a gift from Lisa, retracted only after she reconciled with her husband. She offered to buy it from me. He insists, but Judge Judy's relentless questioning cuts through. If the device worked, would you have paid her back? After a stuttering pause, Gary admits, Yes, Your Honor, earning a stern warning. Don't play games with me, or you'll look like a fool. He blames the device's failure, claiming he tossed it into a lake in April out of frustration, and notes additional purchases of $223 in goods never received due to the return mix-up. Gary denies packaging the return, pointing to his brother Adam, who mistakenly sent his own phone. He insists he harbored no anger over the breakup but his 3-month silence, December to March, raises red flags. Adam testifies, his demeanor calm but slightly embarrassed, admitting he packed the wrong device amid his collection of high-tech phones. Jerry wasn't home, so I handled it over the phone, he explains, claiming he tried contacting Lisa in December without success. Judge Judy's skepticism is palpable. This smells like a scam, gentlemen, she declares, her voice dripping with suspicion. She hammers Gary's inaction. You knew about your brother's mistake in December but did nothing? No call, no letter, no follow-up. Until March. Gary fidgets, offering weak excuses, while Adam remains stoic, his error a critical blow to their defense. Lindsay, Lisa's friend, corroborates the loan's intent, her testimony adding emotional weight as she describes Lisa's stress over the debt. Judge Judy's cross-examination is vintage sharp, unforgiving, exposing Gary's slick gift claim as a flimsy cover. This isn't about communication, it's about character, she quips, suggesting breakup resentment drove his inaction. Gary's evasions hint at guilt, while Lisa's poise reflects reclaimed agency. Legally, this breach of verbal contract, failure to repay despite agreement, violates common law principles per Thomson Reuters. Adam's packing error doesn't absolve Gary, as his delay in addressing it strengthens. Lisa's claim under California's small claims framework. The FTC notes billions lost in tech scams annually, often entangled with personal disputes like this, highlighting the risks of overseas purchases and relational loans. Judge Judy delivers her ruling with her signature blend of clarity and moral authority. Mr. Guthrie, this was no gift. It was a loan you promised to repay, and your inaction proves otherwise. You owe Ms. Kerr $3,035. She excludes the $223 for additional goods, advising Lisa to pursue that separately. Be smarter next time. No shady companies, no shady exes. Her moral bite is sharp. Don't exploit trust, especially in romance. The verdict upholds contract law basics. A promise with consideration. Lisa's payment creates an enforceable agreement breached by Gary's non-repayment, per Nolo's legal guides. In small claims, verbal contracts suffice if proven, here by Gary's admission and Lisa's evidence. Nationally, U.S. Census data shows millions of relational debt disputes annually, often turning on intent. The case reflects broader issues. The FTC reports over $10 billion lost in tech-related scams yearly, with relational fallout amplifying losses. Post-ruling, Gary casually laments tossing the device, saying he didn't catch many fish that day. Adam was unaware of the lake incident. Lisa emphasizes her reconciled marriage as her priority, thanking Judge Judy for justice. Hunting versus Rodriguez and Kerr versus Guthrie paint stark portraits of trust betrayed and promises broken. Daniel's poker fueled rage cost Amber $1,890, $3 in car repairs, a stark lesson in temper control and alcohol's dangers. Lisa's spy phone debacle reclaimed $3,035 from Gary's deceit, exposing the pitfalls of relational finances. Judge Judy's rulings deliver justice with tough love. Actions have consequences, and accountability is non-negotiable. United States law protects agreements but demands proof, and these cases show how personal flaws, rage, deception, fracture bonds. As you drift off, reflect on trust's fragility and the strength to demand fairness. Sleep well, dreaming of balanced scales and wiser tomorrows. Where real-life legal stories are told under the spotlight of the night. I am your narrator, a writer who has spent 2 decades listening to and recreating human conflicts, stories of betrayal, responsibility, and justice. Tonight, as the city has fallen silent, as the worries of a long day have been temporarily set aside, we will journey together to a small but powerful courtroom in America. Here, under the direction of a legendary judge, Judge Judy, 2 seemingly simple cases will reveal the complex hidden corners of human nature. The first case, Hunting versus Rodriguez, will take us into a fateful poker night where alcohol, pride, and a disputed hand turned friends into enemies, leaving behind 2 damaged cars and a friendship put to the test. The second case, Kerr versus Guthrie, is a story of a whirlwind romance turned bitter. A spy phone, a forgotten promise, and a clumsy act about a mistakenly sent device. This is a battle not just for money, but for lost trust. Relax your body, find your most comfortable position. Let my voice be your guide, leading you into the tense yet completely safe atmosphere of the courtroom. We will analyze every testimony together, dissect every piece of evidence, and contemplate the sharp wisdom of Judge Judy. Now, close your eyes. The session is about to begin. The lights in courtroom number 90, one shine on 2 young but tense faces. On the plaintiff's side is Amber Hunting, a 21-year-old female student. She wears a simple blouse, her hair tied back neatly, but her eyes shine with determination and a hint of fatigue. She sits with her back straight, hands placed neatly on the table, a posture that shows seriousness and a readiness to fight for what is right. Opposite her is the defendant, Daniel Rodriguez, also 21. Daniel appears more restless. He wears a t-shirt, his posture slightly slouched, his eyes constantly darting around the room, as if looking for an escape. There is an underlying defiance in his gaze, but it's mixed with a nervousness he cannot hide. And on the seat of power, Judge Judith Shining, or Judge Judy, sits like an eagle. Her razor-sharp eyes scan both sides, her glasses perched on the bridge of her nose. She wastes no time. Ms. Hunting. Her voice rings out, decisive and without any embellishment. You are suing Mr. Rodriguez for vandalizing your 2 cars. Tell me what happened on the night of August 27, 2004. Amber takes a deep breath. Her voice, though slightly trembling at first, quickly becomes steady. Your Honor, that evening I hosted a poker game at my house. There were about 6 people, and Daniel was the only one I didn't know. He was a friend of Robert, a mutual friend of ours. When he arrived, I had a feeling he had already been drinking. She pauses for a moment, as if reliving the atmosphere of that night. We played happily for a few hours. Everything was fine, until one final hand. Judge Judy interrupts, a characteristic habit of hers to get straight to the point. One hand of cards, it's always a hand of cards or a woman. Go on, Amber nods. Daniel thought he had won. He had a few questions about the rules, and when we explained, he suddenly became very defensive and aggressive. He started cursing, shouting. He said we were trying to cheat him. In Amber's account, we can picture the scene. A cozy living room, the sound of laughter, cards being dealt, chips being bet. And then suddenly, the atmosphere changes, the fun vanishes, replaced by tension. Words turn into shouts. A man, a guest, suddenly becomes a threat. He pushed people. Amber continues, her voice now tinged with anger. He tried to start a fight with my boyfriend. And then he grabbed a bicycle that was in the corner of the room and threw it right across my hardwood floor. The handlebar hit one of my friends in the arm, causing a bruise. The act of throwing the bicycle is a crucial detail. It's not just words, it's violence. It's an escalation from an argument to an act of property damage and physical harm. This is the point of no return. Judge Judy turns to Daniel. Mr. Rodriguez, you heard what she said? Did you throw a bicycle inside her house? Daniel shakes his head vigorously, his voice a bit higher, a sign of defensiveness. That's not how it was. I won that hand. Her boyfriend even admitted I won at first, but then she jumped in, looked at her boyfriend's cards, and said, no, you won. And he changed his story. I just wanted to get my money. I admit I called her a name, but it was because I was angry. The women had already lost all their money and weren't playing anymore. This was between the men. Daniel's defense paints a different picture. He sees himself as the victim of a double cross, cheated out of his money by a colluding couple. He tries to frame it as a man's issue, downplaying the role of the women present. This is a psychological tactic, an attempt to create a tacit alliance with other men in the courtroom, even the judge, though she is a woman. But Judge Judy is not moved. So you were angry? She asks, a simple but powerful question. Yes, Daniel admits. And were you asked to leave the house? They wanted me to go? Daniel says, but I didn't want to because my money was still in the pot. Her boyfriend wanted to fight me. They finally gave me back my buy-in, and my friend Robert walked me out. This is a point of conflict. Amber said it took 15 minutes to calm Daniel down, and that Robert had to escort him out. Daniel, however, says they walked out together. This subtle difference shows one side describing a struggle, while the other describes a reluctant but voluntary departure. And this is where the story moves from inside the house to the front yard, where two cars are parked under the dim streetlights. Amber states, "Right after Daniel left, I heard a loud noise. I ran outside and saw my two cars were dented. One was mine, the other was my mother's. Both had round dents, as if they had been kicked very hard. I called the police immediately." She presents photos of the damage. The dents are clearly visible on the glossy paint. She also submits the police report. The responding detective noted the dent on her mother's 1997 Ford Escort, describing it as fresh damage with paint chips on the ground. In United States law, particularly in states like California, this act falls under the crime of vandalism or malicious mischief. To constitute this offense, the prosecutor, or in this case, the plaintiff in a civil suit, must prove two main elements. L1, the defendant damaged the property of another, and L2, the act was done maliciously or willfully. Maliciously doesn't necessarily mean it was premeditated. It can simply be an act that erupts from anger with the intent to cause harm. Amber's evidence is quite strong. There was a motive, the argument, an opportunity. Daniel had just left the house in an angry state, and physical evidence, fresh damage confirmed by the police. But one link was still missing. No one had actually seen Daniel commit the act. And that's when a courtroom door opens. A young man walks in. It is Robert Silva. Judge Judy looks at him. "Who are you?" "I'm Robert Silva. I'm a witness." "For whom?" "For Amber." Robert says, his eyes avoiding Daniel's. The air in the room seems to freeze. Daniel is stunned. His friend of 15 years, the one who brought him to the party, is now standing on the opposing side. This is a dramatic twist. The betrayal of a close friend often carries more weight than any other evidence. Judge Judy swears Robert in. "Mr. Silva, what did you see that night?" Robert hesitates, his voice low. "When we went outside, I saw Daniel kick Amber's car." A short but devastating confession. However, Robert adds, "I only saw him kick one car, not two." This is interesting. Robert's testimony confirms Daniel's action, but doesn't fully align with Amber's accusation. Is Amber exaggerating the damage, or did Robert only witness part of the event? Judge Judy turns back to Daniel, her eyes no longer questioning but certain. She has enough pieces of the puzzle. "Mr. Rodriguez," she says, her tone cold. "Did you have a motive to be angry that night?" Daniel, after a moment of silence, finally admits. Yes, a critical admission. He had a reason to act out. "So let me ask you this." Judge Judy continues, leaning forward. "If you were sitting in this chair, hearing all of this testimony, the argument, your anger, you being asked to leave the house, and the fresh damage on the cars, and the testimony from your own friend of 15 years, would you think you caused that damage?" This is Judge Judy's intellectual finishing move. She doesn't ask, "Did you do it?" a question Daniel could easily deny. She forces him to put himself in the position of an objective arbiter, to use logic and evidence. She forces him to confront the weight of the circumstances. Daniel looks down at the floor, then looks up, his eyes now showing defeat. "Yes, ma'am." Boom! The invisible gavel of justice has fallen. Judgment for the plaintiff. Judge Judy declares without a hint of hesitation. The amount is $1,893, based on the estimate to repair 2 dents. In the post-trial interview, Daniel tries to downplay the incident, blaming alcohol and saying the damage was not a big deal. This attitude further validates the judge's decision. He feels no remorse, only regret for being caught. Robert, the friend, also says it was just one night. But for Amber, it was a night where trust was broken and property was destroyed. And for the law, it was an act that demanded accountability. From the explosive rage of youth, we shift to another story, a drama of love, deception, and technology. The case of Kerr versus Guthrie is a classic example of how modern relationships can become complicated and messy when money and emotions intertwine. The plaintiff is Lisa Kerr, a 26-year-old account manager who appears intelligent and composed, but there's a sadness and disappointment behind her eyes. The defendant is Gary Guthrie, her ex-boyfriend. Gary has a confident, almost smug look. He sits there with a half smile, as if this is all just a minor misunderstanding. Lisa is suing Gary for $3,035, the amount she spent to buy a spy phone for him. Judge Judy begins, her voice tinged with curiosity. A spy phone? Miss Kerr, please explain. Lisa tells her story. She and Gary had a short, lived relationship while she was separated from her husband. Gary worked in security surveillance and said he needed a specialized device for his job. He found a phone he liked online. Lisa explains, but he couldn't buy it himself. He asked me to use my credit card, and he promised he would definitely pay me back. This is a classic situation. A person in a vulnerable emotional state, wanting to please their partner, easily agrees to a financial request. Legally, Gary's promise to pay her back created an oral contract. In small claims courts in the U.S., oral contracts are legally binding as long as the plaintiff can prove their existence through circumstances, text messages, or witnesses. Lisa continues, the problem is, the phone was delivered after we had already broken up, and he never paid me a cent. Judge Judy turns to Gary. Mr. Guthrie, you owe her money for the phone, correct? Gary shrugs, his smile widening. Your Honor, it was a gift. She gave it to me. She only changed her mind and asked for the money back after she got back together with her husband. A bold and blatant lie. He is trying to paint Lisa as a petty woman, acting out of jealousy. This is a common character assassination tactic in court. But Judge Judy has seen this game too many times. She squints her eyes. A gift worth over $3,000 from someone she only dated for a short time. Do you really want me to believe that, you clever boy? She calls him a clever boy, a phrase dripping with sarcasm, signaling that she has seen right through him. She continues her attack from another angle. All right, let's say it was a gift. Then why didn't you keep it? What happened to the phone? Gary starts to falter. His smile vanishes. It didn't work. Oh, so it didn't work. Judge Judy repeats, her voice full of skepticism. So let me ask you, if it had worked, would you have intended to pay her for it? This is a trap. If he says no, he admits to taking advantage of her. If he says yes, his was a gift argument collapses. Gary stammers, "Oh, well, yes, Your Honor." Judge Judy nearly shouts, "So it wasn't a gift? You just admitted it." Don't play games with me, Mr. Guthrie, or you'll end up looking like a fool. Gary has backed himself into a corner. Now, he must cling to his new defense the phone was faulty. The company said I could send it back for an exchange for another device. Gary explains. And Lisa paid to ship it back. Lisa confirms this. She paid the postage to return the phone. It seems like things were on the right track. Until the truth came out. The company never received the phone. Lisa says, her voice a mix of confusion and anger. In mid-December, I found out that the phone that was sent was the wrong phone. The wrong phone. This story gets stranger and stranger. Gary is quick to place blame. I wasn't the one who packed it. My brother Adam did it. Adam, Gary's brother, is called to testify. He is an older version of Gary, with the same confidence, but with a bit more anxiety. Adam admits, "It's true, I packed it. I made a mistake. Gary wasn't home. He called and asked me to pack it. I have a lot of high-tech phones, and I accidentally packed my own cell phone." Judge Judy looks at Adam, then back at Gary. She doesn't believe a word of it. A mistake. Or a scam, she asks, her voice dropping to a frightening whisper. "Mr. Adam, you say you discovered this mistake in mid-December. What did you do?" "I tried to call Lisa," Adam says, "but I couldn't reach her." Judge Judy turns to Gary. "And you, Mr. Guthrie? You knew your brother sent the wrong phone in December. What did you do between then and March when Miss Kerr finally found you?" Gary is silent. "No." "Did you send her a letter?" "No." "Did you take the correct phone to the post office yourself and mail it back?" "No." "Why not?" Judge Judy presses. "Why didn't you do anything to fix a $3,000 mistake?" "I'll tell you why. Because you were angry. You were angry that she got back together with her husband, and you decided you weren't going to do anything at all. This isn't a lack of communication. This is a lack of character." Gary's silence from December to March is the most damning evidence. It shows indifference, irresponsibility, and very likely malice. He not only breached the oral contract, but also demonstrated gross negligence in handling property that was not his. And then, Gary blurts out a final, unbelievably foolish confession. "Your Honor, I threw the phone in the lake." The entire courtroom falls silent. "You did what?" Judge Judy asks, as if she can't believe her ears. "I threw it in the lake in mid-April." Gary repeats, his tone casual. "It didn't work, and I was too frustrated. I went fishing that day, didn't catch anything, so I threw it away." This is the height of absurdity. A man throws a $3,030 $5 electronic device into a lake because he was frustrated. This was clearly an act of revenge. He couldn't have it, and he didn't want Lisa to get her money back either. Legally, this act is called conversion, the intentional destruction or appropriation of another's property. Gary had just hammered the final nail into his own coffin. The verdict comes swiftly and decisively. Judgment for the plaintiff, $3,030 $5. Judge Judy declares. She also dismisses Gary's claim for $223 in additional merchandise he ordered, stating that was his problem to sort out with the company in Thailand. She looks at Lisa and offers one final piece of advice, a piece of advice that is both a legal warning and a life lesson. "Be smarter next time, Miss Kerr. Don't do business with a company in Thailand, and don't do business with Gary and his brother." In the interview afterward, Lisa says that the most important thing is that she and her husband have worked things out. She escaped a toxic relationship and returned to her family. Justice was served, not just in the courtroom, but in her personal life as well. And so, the two trials have concluded. Two stories of mistakes, tempers, and lies have reached their end. Daniel Rodriguez must pay for his explosive rage, an expensive lesson that violence cannot solve frustration. Gary Guthrie, with his lies and schemes, must finally face the consequences of his dishonesty and resentment. Through these cases, Judge Judy does more than just apply the law. She teaches us about personal responsibility. Don't blame the alcohol, she might have said to Daniel. Take responsibility for your actions. Don't try to be clever, she might have said to Gary. The truth will always come out. These stories, though dramatic, bring a sense of order. That in a chaotic world, there is still a place where right and wrong are clearly defined, where those who do wrong are held accountable. And that is a peaceful thought to carry with you into sleep. That justice, though it may sometimes be delayed, still exists. Thank you for listening, podcast. I wish you a deep sleep, filled with dreams of fairness and brighter tomorrows. Welcome back, podcast. In the quiet space of tonight, as the last sounds of the city have faded, giving way to an enveloping silence, we once again begin a journey together. This is not a journey to faraway lands, but an expedition deep into the mind, into the most complex corners of human nature, through true stories from the courtroom of Judge Judy. Tonight, we will turn the pages of the files on ambiguous transactions. These are not contracts meticulously drafted by lawyers, stamped and signed under the lights of an office. No. These are agreements born from the most ordinary moments, sealed with a nod, a promise during a conversation, or a hopeful glance. They are unwritten pacts, built on a foundation that seems solid, but is incredibly fragile trust, emotion, and sometimes even desperation. And precisely because they are not written down, because they lack clear terms, they become the most fertile ground for conflict. When the line between a boss and a friend is blurred, when kindness is suspected of being a calculation, and when a long-standing friendship is suddenly valued in monetary terms, the truth becomes as elusive as smoke. What begins with goodwill can end in bitterness, and sweet promises can turn into acrid accusations in a courtroom. The first story will take us to North Carolina in the case of DLO versus LRE. This is a dramatic play of power, expectation, and disillusionment. On one side is William DeLoe, 57 years old, a seasoned club owner, a man who seemingly has everything, yet perhaps lacks companionship. On the other side is Kimberly Lee, a 25-year-old woman, young, sharp, and full of ambition. They met and an offer was made, not just a job, but a complete employee package, a general manager position, a brand new apartment, and the promise of a fresh start. DeLoe moved Lee, her mother, and her young daughter from another state, setting up a life for her. But what did this Pandora's box of kindness contain? Was it a pure business opportunity, a selfless act of help, or a misplaced emotional investment? What happens when one party craves a decent, friendly relationship, while the other coldly draws the line at my personal life? We will witness a relationship slide from hope to resentment, leaving behind unpaid bills, a trashed apartment, and a man who must declare in court that he was a fool. And if the first case is a complex symphony of broken expectations and unspoken intentions, the second story is like a sad ballad of friendship and money. The case of Moan versus Nuodi. Amber Moon and Amy Wood were not strangers. They had known each other since Amy was just 14. It was a bond built over the years on shared memories, on familiarity, and perhaps on trust. Their agreement was simple: the pay for childcare would come from a government assistance check. But that friendship, ladies and gentlemen, was valued at $945. That amount, contained in a single check, became a ghost that divided them. Amber, the babysitter, says she never received a cent. Amy, the mother, insists that they went to the store together, cashed the check, and she paid in full. One check. Two completely opposite stories. No receipt, no witnesses. So who is lying? How can Judge Judy find the truth in a mess of sworn statements? In this case, we will see her wield her sharpest weapon, not complex statutes, but common sense, a simple yet powerful principle that, if it doesn't make sense, it's not true. Let us step into the courtroom. Let us listen to the testimonies, feel the tension, and contemplate how justice is served. The first act is about to begin. Our play tonight begins in a place where hopes and realities often collide, a nightclub. It was on a sultry June night in 2004, at the Blue Moon Club in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. The air was likely thick with the scent of opportunity, of catchy tunes and promising conversations. In that space, two people from entirely different worlds met. On one side was William Blow, 57 years old. Let's picture him. A man who has lived more than half his life, the owner of a club, someone who has tasted enough ups and downs in business and perhaps in life. He stood there not just as a boss, but as a man possibly in a contemplative stage, searching for something beyond profit margins. Maybe a final passion project, or maybe a connection. Someone to mentor and share his experience with. And then Kimberly re-entered his life. 25 years old, a completely different world. She wasn't a regular customer or an ordinary employee. She exuded a different kind of energy. Young, intelligent, and in Blow's eyes, she had the creativity of youth. She was the director of a non-profit organization, a title that showed she had not only ambition but also ideals. When she started talking about business ideas, about forming an investment group, Blow was captivated. Their meeting ended with an act that seemed simple, but was the seed of all subsequent troubles. Lori gave her phone number to Blow. For her, it might have been a professional courtesy, a way to stay in touch with a potential business partner. She was leaving for Baltimore the next day, and exchanging contact information was perfectly reasonable. But for Blow, an older man attracted to a vibrant young woman, that act probably carried a deeper meaning. It was an invitation, an open door to a potential relationship. And so, through phone calls that lasted for weeks, a plan began to form in Blow's mind. A plan that was bold, generous, and also incredibly risky. That plan was professionally termed by Blow as an employee package. But when we peel back its layers, we see it was much more than that. Blow was in the process of buying a new club and needed a general manager. He chose Lori. But the offer didn't stop at a salary. Blow offered to move Ree's entire family, her mother, and her young daughter, from Baltimore, Maryland, back to North Carolina. He would provide them with a home, an apartment he owned, and a completely new start. Let's pause for a moment and analyze this employee package through a legal and psychological lens. Psychologically, this was an extremely generous, almost paternalistic gesture. Blow wasn't just hiring an employee. He was becoming a patron, a protector. He was building an ecosystem around Ree, with himself at the center. This act stemmed from kindness, from a belief in her potential, but it also unwittingly created a massive power imbalance and an emotional entanglement. Legally, this was a nightmare waiting to happen. In the United States, complex arrangements like this if not documented in writing, become a mess. Their agreement consisted of 3 separate elements, all made orally one. Employment contract. Lee was the general manager. What was the salary? The responsibilities, the working conditions, all were vague. In North Carolina, like most states, the default labor law is at-will employment, meaning either the employer or the employee can terminate the relationship at any time for no reason. This explains why they could later repeatedly fire and quit. 2. Tenancy agreement. Delow provided housing. Who paid for electricity, water, gas? What was the lease term? What were the conditions upon moving out? Without a written lease agreement, Lee became a tenant at will. Doe couldn't just evict her immediately, but the financial obligations were entirely unclear. 3. Personal agreement. This was the murkiest part. Lee stated that she had been clear with Doe. They could get to know each other as friends. If something happens, great. If not, that's great too. Doe agreed. But what did agreed mean in this context? For Lee, it was a boundary. For Doe, it might have been just a hopeful starting point. The combination of these 3 oral contracts created a legal minefield. Everything was based on goodwill and implicit understanding, and when that goodwill ran out, all that was left was chaos. In the first week of August, Marie and her family arrived in North Carolina. The dream began. Initially, everything went well. Their relationship, in Delow's words, was both professional and social, but this short honeymoon period quickly came to an end. Once she was in my house, Delow recounted bitterly in court. Once she saw that she was basically taken care of, everything changed. The first moment of fracture, the last straw for Delow, came from a simple but powerful sentence. It was the second time Lee brought her daughter over. She looked directly at Delow and said, "Don't get near my daughter." Imagine how Delow felt at that moment. He who had welcomed her entire family, who had provided them with a roof over their heads, was now being seen as a potential threat to the child. For Lee, it might have been a mother's protective instinct, a way to establish a clear and necessary boundary. But for Delow, it was a slap to his pride and to the very fantasy of a close, family-like relationship he had built in his mind. He interpreted her words with a painful logic. If I can't get near your daughter, then maybe I shouldn't get near you either. An invisible wall had been erected. Their social relationship withered after about a month. Only work remained, but even work couldn't be salvaged. Personal tension had crept into the professional environment. Delow asked Loree not to bring her boyfriend to the club, a request that could be reasonable from an owner wanting to maintain a professional image, but could also be an expression of jealousy. Loree flightly refused, declaring her right to a personal life. The battle of boundaries continued. Finally, at the end of January, after countless instances of firings and resignations, they both agreed it was time to end it. But another problem arose. Loree had nowhere to go, and once again Delow relented. He agreed to let her stay until the end of May so she could graduate from the police academy, a detail showing Loree was still pursuing her own career path. But Loree left earlier than expected, on April 16th, and according to Delow, she snuck out of the house, leaving behind an apartment in pretty bad shape, a dump compared to the brand new condition it was in when she moved in. And that is why they were in Judge Judy's courtroom. Delow was suing for unpaid utility bills and the cost of repairing the damages. Loree countered that she owed nothing, except maybe for the blinds her cat had clawed. Stepping into the courtroom, Judge Judy, with her glasses perched on her nose and an impenetrable gaze, immediately grasped the essence of the problem. She didn't see a lawsuit about utility bills. She saw an older man who had made a terrible business decision based on emotion. "Sir," her voice was sharp as a knife, aimed directly at Delow, "you are 57 years old. You run a business, and you moved a woman you barely knew, along with her entire family, into your home, gave her the keys to the kingdom without a single piece of paper." Delow could only bow his head. "I was a fool. I'm embarrassed and ashamed." His confession did not soften Judge Judy. It only confirmed her diagnosis. She turned to Loree, who maintained a calm, professional demeanor. Loree tried to explain everything from a business perspective, but Judge Judy wasn't buying it. She saw through the ambiguity in Loree's approach. And then, the decisive piece of evidence was presented. Not photos of the messy apartment nor the utility bills. It was a letter written by Dlo himself to Lri. Dlo had returned the checks Lri wrote to pay the bills along with a letter. The narrator will read an excerpt aloud. Kim, this isn't about money. All I wanted was an apology, a thank you, and a little appreciation, some gratitude. You are where you are today because of me. I want a decent, friendly relationship with you, but that's up to you. I have enough enemies. I don't need any more. This letter was a legal suicide. It exposed Dlo's entire true motive. This lawsuit wasn't about reclaiming a few $100s. This lawsuit was the final cry of a wounded heart and a slighted ego. He didn't want money, he wanted validation. He wanted Lri to acknowledge his role in her life. Judge Judy seized on this point. She looked at Lri. Young lady, she said, her tone both a warning and a lecture. Let me tell you something. When you know a man is personally interested in you, and you use that to advance your business goals, that's not just smart. That's deceptive. That's unethical. This was the core lesson of the case. Lri may not have broken a specific law, but she had violated an unwritten ethical code. She had played with fire and left a man burned. In the end, Judge Judy's ruling was cold and practical. She brushed aside all the emotions, the broken expectations, the back and forth accusations. She focused only on what could be proven with paperwork. Amamzing owes Mr. Dlo $388 for the outstanding utility bills, she declared, a paltry sum compared to the $20,000 Dlo felt he had lost, and even smaller compared to the disappointment and bitterness he had to bear. This verdict was not a victory for Dlo. It was a confirmation that in the mess of human relationships, the court can only resolve tangible figures. Emotional debts, the invisible wounds, will forever remain unjudged. As he left the courtroom, Dlo offered one last word, a bitter summary for the entire story. If I ever loved her, I'll never love again. The first act of our play closes, leaving a costly lesson about the boundaries that must be respected, and the price to be paid when kindness and expectation are not reciprocated fairly. If the first case was a complex symphony of broken expectations and unspoken intentions, where emotions and money were tangled beyond repair, the second story is like a sad, more straightforward ballad. We leave the world of older businessmen and ambitious young directors to arrive at a more common, more relatable scene. Here, there are no employee packages worth tens of thousands of dollars, no emotional letters used as evidence. Instead, we have a long-standing friendship, a child in need of care, and a government check. A dispute that seems simple, yet poses the most fundamental and raw question. When there is no evidence, no paperwork, just one word against another, how do we find the truth? Where did the money go? Let us listen. Before Judge Judy stood two young women, Amber Moon, 25, and Amy Wood, 22. They were not business rivals or bitter ex-lovers. They were once friends. Their relationship stemmed from the past, from when Amy was just a 14-year-old girl and Amber was a friend of her older sister. It was a bond built on shared memories, on familiarity, and perhaps on trust. It was that trust that led to their childcare arrangement. Amy, a young mother working as a cashier, needed someone reliable to look after her child. Amber, a babysitter, needed a job. Everything was perfect. Their agreement, much like the previous case, was an oral one, but it was far simpler. Amber would watch Amy's child, and her payment would come from the child care assistance check that Amy received from the government. In the United States, there are many state and federal assistance programs for low-income families, and child care subsidies are one of them. This money is provided for a single, clear purpose: to pay for child care expenses, enabling a parent to work. It is not personal income to be spent at will. In essence, Amy Wood was merely an intermediary, a person receiving funds on behalf of the service provider, in this case Amber Moon. This setup, while convenient, contained a fatal flaw that it placed all the power and trust in Amy's hands. Amber worked first, and then had to wait and trust that Amy would hand over the check when it arrived. Trust was the only thing binding this agreement, and that trust was shattered. Amber Moon stood before the court suing Amy Wood for $945 in unpaid wages. Her story was simple. She did the work, but she never received the money. Amy Wood, initially with a calm demeanor, told a completely different story. A story that was more complex, stranger, and as we shall see, more absurd. According to Amy, around March or early April, Amber Moon suddenly not shown up one day, said she'd be back that night or the next day and never appeared. Never called. Never said anything. She had abandoned the job without a word. Amy, left in a lurch, had to find another babysitter. Then in April, the check arrived. Amy recounted that Amber called her every day that week, asking about it. And this is the core of Amy's story. She claimed that Amber came to her house. They had no argument about Amber leaving, but instead they amicably went to a check-cashing store together. There, Amy cashed the check and gave the entire $945 in cash to Amber. Amber, upon hearing this story, had only one reaction, uttered with unconcealed outrage. "That is a lie. So we have a classic said situation. One side says yes, the other says no. No receipt, no bank transfer record, no third-party witness. So what will Judge Judy do?" This is where we witness her extraordinary talent. When there is no physical evidence, Judge Judy uses her most powerful weapon, her brain, and something she calls common sense. She has an almost supernatural ability to detect absurdity, something often called a baloney detector. She doesn't look at what they say. She looks at what their stories imply. She begins to dismantle Amy Wood's story, piece by piece, not with law, but with pure logic. "All right, Ms. Wood," she begins, her tone deceptively calm. "Let's walk through your story together. You want me to believe that your babysitter, a person who clearly needs money, suddenly vanished, leaving her job without a word." Amy nods. She didn't call, didn't text, just disappeared. Judge Judy continues, emphasizing the absurdity. Then a few weeks later, she starts calling you, not to apologize, not to explain, but to demand money. She calls every day. That shows she desperately needs the money, correct? Amy hesitates. "Yes, good." Judge Judy says, "So we have a person who abandoned her job, but is very, very desperate for money. And then, according to you, she comes to your house. You and she go to the store together. You cash the check, take out $945 in cash, and you give it to her." "That's right," Amy affirms. And here comes Judge Judy's finishing blow. And after receiving nearly $1,000 in cash, she simply takes it and leaves. Not a single argument. No one asks, "Hey, why did you disappear for a month?" And then she goes to the trouble of filling out forms, filing a case, and suing you in court to get back the very same money you say you already gave her. Does that make any sense to you, Ms. Wood? Silence falls. Amy's story, when dissected under the light of logic, completely falls apart. It doesn't make sense. A person who has been paid would not sue to get paid again. A meeting after a month-long mysterious disappearance would not happen as smoothly as a walk in the park. Judge Judy leans forward, her eyes piercing. "I'm going to tell you the number one rule in my courtroom, and in life. If it doesn't make sense, it's not true." This sentence is the foundation of her philosophy. Common sense is the ultimate judge. As her logical story crumbles, Amy Wood begins to change. The initial calm demeanor disappears, replaced by defensiveness. And as Judge Judy continues to press, that defensiveness turns into anger. This is a classic psychological reaction of someone caught in a lie. When they can no longer defend their story with logic, they resort to attacking the character of their accuser. "She's a liar," Amy yells, pointing at Amber. "She only cares about money! She just wants to party. She sees kids as an inconvenience." But it's too late. This outburst only reveals her desperation. Judge Judy is unfazed. She's seen this thousands of times. Now, she shifts from logic to law. She explains to Amy the seriousness of her actions. "Do you understand, Ms. Wood?" Her voice hardens. "That money was not yours. It was given to you by the state for one purpose only, to pay your child care provider. When you took that check, cashed it, and kept the money for yourself, you don't just owe Ms. Moon money. You stole. You stole from the state. Money that was meant for the care of your own child." She has elevated the matter from a small civil dispute to an act of fraud and theft. She forces Amy to confront not just the financial consequences, but the moral weight of her actions. Legally, this is a perfect example of the burden of proof. In a civil suit, the initial burden is on the plaintiff, Amber, to present a credible case. She has done so. She worked and was not paid. Now, the burden unofficially shifts to the defendant, Amy, to provide an explanation or refuting evidence. Amy's explanation is not only lacking evidence, but is so illogical that it becomes evidence against her. A receipt from the check cashing store, a bank statement showing a large cash withdrawal, a witness. Anything could have helped her, but she has nothing. You have nothing. Judge Judy concludes, her voice filled with contempt. You have nothing but a fantasy story. It is a complete fabrication. The verdict is delivered swiftly and inevitably. Judgment for the plaintiff, she declares, $945. Even after the verdict is rendered, Amy Wood does not accept it. She continues to scream, calling Amber a liar. This reaction is the final definitive stamp, a confirmation to everyone in the courtroom that Judge Judy saw the truth. It is not the voice of someone wrongly accused. It is the roar of someone who has lost the game and refuses to accept responsibility. Amber Moon, throughout the trial, said very little. She didn't need to. The truth and common sense were on her side. She leaves the courtroom not with the joy of victory, but perhaps with the sadness of a friendship now permanently broken by greed and deceit. As the courtroom door closes, as the heated arguments fade into silence, and justice, in the form of cold, hard numbers, has been decreed, what are we left with? We are left with the echoes, the stories of broken relationships and lessons that cannot be bought with money. Tonight, we have examined two ambiguous transactions, two agreements built on the fragile foundation of spoken words. On the surface, the case of William Dlow and Kimberly Rhee seems more complex, more multidimensional than the story of Amber Moon and Amy Wood. One was a drama of emotional expectations, career calculations, and a wounded ego. The other was simply a lie about a check. But if we look deeper, we see that both stories originate from the same fatal flaw of failure to clearly define reality. In the first case, the ambiguity lay in intention. William Dlow was engaging in a transaction of the heart. He invested with care with the hope of companionship, and he expected to be repaid with gratitude, appreciation, and perhaps even affection. Meanwhile, Kimberly Rhee was engaging in a transaction of the mind. She accepted the opportunity, the material support, and only intended to reciprocate with professional performance and a measured friendship. They stood together, talked to each other, but they were participating in two completely different transactions. The contract of the heart that Dlow wrote in his own mind never matched the contract of the mind that Rhee was pursuing. And when these two invisible contracts conflicted, the result was a collapse. In the second case, the ambiguity lay in action. The transaction here was much simpler, labor in exchange for money. But the ambiguity was created by a blatant lie, a charade put on to conceal an act of theft. Amy Wood tried to bend reality with her absurd story, hoping that in the chaos of words, the truth about the check would be buried. Both cases teach us that what is left unsaid, what is only implicitly understood, are the time bombs in every relationship. Dlow assumed his generosity would speak for itself. Moon assumed their friendship was a guarantee of honesty. Both assumptions were wrong. So what is the final lesson we carry with us into our sleep tonight? The first, and perhaps most practical, lesson is about the importance of transparency. People often say, better safe than sorry, or a verbal agreement isn't worth the paper it's written on. But demanding a clear agreement, a piece of paper that records what was promised, is not an act of suspicion. On the contrary, it is an act of respect. Respect for yourself, respect for the other person, and most importantly, enough respect for the relationship to protect it from the erosion of memory, from misunderstandings, and from changes of the heart. A written contract is not a wall that separates. It is a map that both parties draw together to ensure they arrive at the same destination. The second lesson is deeper. It is about the nature of truth. Judge Judy's courtroom, in a way, is a laboratory of truth. In it, personal stories, emotional justifications, beautifully crafted excuses, all are stripped away until only the bare skeleton of logic remains. If it doesn't make sense, it's not true. Her principle is an Occam's razor, cutting away all unnecessary complexity to find the simplest answer. Our world is full of complex stories. Each of us lives in our own version of reality. Shaped by our desires, fears, and biases, Judge Judy, in a sense, is the embodiment of objective reality. She is the voice of common sense, an external force that compels us to confront the contradictions in the stories we tell ourselves. She reminds us that no matter how much we want to believe something, the truth has a structure, a logic of its own, and it will never bend to fit our wishes. And finally, the most important lesson is perhaps an invitation to self-reflection. Before suing someone in court for a broken heart like Dlo, perhaps one should first ask, what is my true motive? Am I seeking justice? Or am I seeking revenge for a wounded ego? Before constructing a lie to escape responsibility, like Amy, perhaps one should pause and listen to the moral compass within. Because the biggest and most important trial does not take place under the lights of a camera, but in the silence of our own souls. That is where we must face ourselves with no lawyers, no excuses. Just us and the truth. The stories of these people, their mistakes, their pain, have ultimately brought us the peace of wisdom, the peace that comes from seeing order restored, from seeing right acknowledged. Thank you for taking the time to listen to podcast. May tonight's stories bring you deep contemplation. I wish you a very good night's sleep, dreams that are clear and transparent, and a tomorrow where all your transactions with this life are built on a foundation of sincerity and respect.